Good morning, everybody. You are at a meeting of the Irving Board of Library Trustees and the Library Director Search Committee. We need you to be aware that this meeting is being recorded, both in audio and video. For this meeting, the town is using a product called GoToWebinar. Attendees using the GoToWebinar app online or on a mobile device should be able to see the meeting presentation and to ask questions when directed. Your audio has been muted. Attendees participating by phone are also muted and in listen-only mode. Again, when directed, if questions are available, there's a toolbar in a question section. You may enter your question there. I just want to remind you that it's the discretion of the chairperson whether or not questions are being taken and whether or not audience members will participate today. Thank you so much.
All righty. Mackenzie, do you want to join in or shall I speak? I think you want me to speak. Mackenzie Bailey is normally our chair. She's asked to have someone else be interim chair, which I'm willing to do, but if anyone else is interested, you're certainly welcome.
I'd nominate Rupert to be the temporary new chair. He has the administrative screen there.
I second.
Any discussion? Other nominations? Okay, those who are on phones, if you're in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and those who are on screen,
Aye.
if you're in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous, as near as I can tell. All right, so I will proceed as interim chair. And at this time, I would like to invite in our first interviewee of the day. If I can figure out how to do it.
I can help you out with that, sir. I will move Andrea into the panelist section.
Thank you.
Andrea should now be able to unmute herself and also share video.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You just
And
got to
can
click
you-
on the camera. It's a square with a sort of a triangle
The square with a triangle.
right underneath the microphone.
I see the microphone. Oh,
Mine's a little green circle, actually. Oh, there we go.
Oh, now that
Figured
it's
it out.
activated, it's green. Beautiful. Hi, Andrea.
hello. Hi, that's much better.
Welcome, and thank you for coming for an interview. My name is Rupert, and I am one of the Board of Trustees for the Irving Public Library. And so we're going to have something like 45 or 50 minutes of time for an interview. Each of us will ask you some questions. Please introduce yourself when you ask the question, folks. And just so that you know, Andrea, there are a couple of people who you don't see. Charlie Zielinski's on the phone and Mackenzie Bailey is on the phone. And did I miss anybody else? Oh yes,
Well,
Jean is in transit and will join us as soon as she can. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
All righty. Go ahead.
I'm Becky Hubbard, and I am an Irving resident, an avid library user, and I'm also president of the Friends of the Library. And I have the first question. Why be a library director? Why Irving? And what aspect of this position do you expect to like the most? And which aspect do you think you will like the least?
So I think that I should start by telling you just a little bit about myself. I'm Andrea Bernard. I'm currently the library director in Charlemont at Tyler Memorial Library. And prior to becoming a librarian, I've been a librarian for the past 6 years, which is also about the same amount of time I've been a librarian at Tyler Memorial Library. And prior to that, I had a different career. I had a degree, I have a degree in counseling psychology, and spent more than 25 years working with children and families who were exposed to violence and at risk for developmental delay. So I have always loved doing public service. And in my very last position in that role, I was a forensic interviewer at the DA's office, which means that I interviewed primarily children, but also adults with cognitive limitations or disabilities who were victims of crimes. And when the DA was stepping down, I knew that I had to reinvent myself and made the decision to go back to school for a second master's degree and became a librarian. And the thing that I know already that I love the most is continuing to provide public service. It's been a lifelong passion for me. It was part of the reason I chose librarianship. I wanted to continue providing public service. And it is absolutely the thing that I love the most. And that is just interacting with people who come into the library. There are some people who I know who come into the library. I know them quite well personally. And there are others who the only thing I really know about them is what they love to read. And in either case, I love those interactions. So I know for me that continued service will be the thing that I really enjoy. In terms of why Irving, prior to making the decision to apply and as part of getting ready for this meeting, I did a bit of research about Irving and read many of the reports that you have available online, and your annual reports and your strategic plan and such. And one of the things that really stood out from all of that material that's available online is that Irving is very community focused. It's clear that the volunteers, the friends, the trustees, the municipality are all working together to really promote and make the library a flagship enterprise for the town. And that even goes down to, I think there was one picture of your new library, which is quite beautiful. That was an aerial view, and it showed that the school and the library and the senior center are all together. And I think that's a real statement about who you are. And that made Irving very attractive to me. So what I'll like the least, as a solo librarian, I have really loved being a kind of a jack of all trades because, we have to do everything. We have to purchase materials. We have to get the materials out to patrons. We're cataloging. We're interacting with CW Mars. And I would say cataloging is probably my least favorite activity. I never intended to be a cataloger. So that is really, in terms of librarianship, that has been my least favorite activity, but it's something that I do. And actually, in some ways, look forward to, because it is the way to get those materials out to the patrons who are so excited when the boxes of new books arrive.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Andrea. I'm Dan Hammock, library trustee, finance committee member, and a variety of things in town. The question I have for you, with COVID-19 is affecting library services, I'm sure you know. If we continue to operate from a closed building, what new services would you offer our patrons? And what do you see staff doing?
Yeah, so that's a really important question now. And I've been attending meetings run by both the Massachusetts Library System and the Massachusetts Board of Public Commissioners. I have a frog in my throat, and that is because I have seasonal allergies and every tree is blooming. So I apologize for that. I'll try to get rid of that. Okay, so COVID-19 is of course on everyone's mind. And these are some ideas that I would have in terms of providing service at this time, especially if the library were to remain closed to the public. First of all, it's really important, I think, to check in with staff, make sure that staff can be in the building safely. So that's the first thing that needs to happen. Make sure that staff don't have underlying conditions that make them more vulnerable to COVID-19, and work with the municipality around those issues if there are any. So that's first and foremost, is making sure that staff are safe to be in the building. Once that's been established, I think it's important then to look at what services we can realistically provide. And I think curbside pickup might be a way to begin providing library services, and having a plan in place for how to do that would be really important. A very clearly spelled out plan that ensures the safety of the staff who are checking in materials and quarantining materials, and then returning those materials to shelves to be borrowed again at the appropriate time. So I think curbside delivery with a plan in place might be a good start. I think even though there is curbside delivery, some residents might not feel comfortable borrowing library materials. And I think people will have different levels of comfort about coming to the library and actually borrowing physical materials. For those patrons who are choosing to remain homebound at this time, it might be helpful to explore the possibility of at-home delivery. And again, working through any of the issues around that idea to ensure safety of staff and patrons. I also think that we could do library by mail for some patrons who, again, are really still distancing. And I think that's another possibility as a new service. I think staff who are able could work on any of those ideas. I also think this is a great time for staff. One of the other things I also noticed about Irving is that you've recently made a commitment to professional development for staff, which is very important. And this could be a good time for professional development as an activity for staff. Because many of our library associations are offering those resources, and many of them are currently freely available or available at a very reduced rate. So I think that's another thing to look at. I think that Irving Public Library offers a very nice array of digital services. I think that promoting those is something that staff could be working on, and assisting patrons with using those services would be really important, and another way that patrons can stay connected to the library. I also think that to resolve any issues or to assist patrons, there could be call-in hours that staff help with, so that patrons know there are specific days and times when they could call in either for technical assistance because they tried to download Libby and they couldn't, or they always meant to get a library card and they never did and now they wish they had. I think there are ways that we could help people do those kinds of things online, and even some troubleshooting with devices could happen online. Perhaps not everything, but I do think some of those things could still happen. And then I think that some of the time leading up to the library reopening should be used to really take a very close look at the library. And you don't have very much experience having patrons in your new buildings, so that might be a bit of a challenge in terms of understanding traffic patterns and where people might be going in the library and what spaces might be getting the most use. You might not exactly have that information yet, but it would be important to do, to make sure that collections are displayed in a way that allows patrons to have some distancing, and again that traffic patterns allow for that. And it might also be a good time to look at your circulation desk and look at how distance can be maintained there, how you're going to be checking in and out materials, etc. So I think those are things that staff can be working on at this time. And I think regular maintenance of the library, you've just moved into your library. It seems like you've been doing some weeding as part of your move. Those kinds of activities, regular library maintenance, excuse me again, can certainly be part of what the staff is working on. So I hope that's helpful.
Thanks.
Great.
Hi, this is Rupert. I'm just going to step in and welcome Jean, who's just joined us. Jean, this is Andrea Bernard.
Hi.
Hello, Andrea.
Hello.
And, we gave away your question 2, but you're still on track, Jean, for questions 7 and 11. So if you could introduce yourselves when your turn comes up, that would be great. And welcome.
So I guess I'll jump in. Hi, I'm Jane Irvin. I am not an Irving resident, but I am the school librarian from right next door, the Irving Elementary School librarian. And both I personally use the Irving Library a lot, and we get a fair number of books through ILL, and have worked with the public library, Jean, and the current director. So I have a question here about young adults. Our young adults barely saw the new building before it closed. They're a varied group. They're gamers, serious readers, crafters. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience working with young adults? You introduced yourself a little bit. What have you found engages them? What services and activities would you offer them through the Irving Public Library?
So I think it's important to meet people where they are. And I think that things that engage young adults most are the things that they're naturally interested in, and exploring the things that they're curious about. I can tell you a little bit about a few of the activities I've done with young adults at the library. And so, for example, with children in grades, excuse me again, I am allergic to all trees except for birch. How did that happen to me? And they are all blooming. So I apologize for that again. So one of the things that I worked on in the last year with 5th and 6th graders was a trip that we took to UMass Amherst to use their digital media center. And so a group of 5th and 6th graders came to the library, and we learned a CAD program, which is used for 3D printing. And we did that together on 2 occasions. And then as a group, we traveled to the Digital Media Center at UMass Amherst, where a professor gave a lecture about bees. The point of, we wanted this activity to have a broader perspective. So we were going to be 3D printing bee hotels, which are for solitary bees. And so we learned the CAD program at the library, and then went off to UMass, where the kids had a talk by a professor who is primarily interested in bees, and he talked about his research on bees and the importance of bees, and gave time for the kids to ask questions. And then the kids met a group of UMass Amherst students who are part of their bee club. And so they got to meet a group of college students and learn about what they're doing, what they're working on. And then the kids had a tutorial, a much more advanced tutorial than the one I gave on using the CAD program. And then we worked on making the bee hotels. We walked to the cafeteria and had lunch in the cafeteria, and came back, and the kids had a virtual reality program so that they could be inside a hive and see the bees. And then went back to work using the Tinkercad software, and finished their bee hotels, which were then printed by UMass Amherst and mailed back to us. Because 3D printing can take some time, sometimes 24 hours for a single item. So we weren't able to stay. But the point of that whole experience was to learn a little bit about a new technology, to have an experience that was a bit of a window into what it might be like to go to college, because it's not too early to dream about those kinds of things. For our kids, I think it's not too early to have some dreams and some different experiences. So that's one example. I also have several high school students who volunteer regularly at the library. I actually taught them to do copy cataloging, and they are super fast at data entry. The high school students are doing inputting of new magazines on a weekly basis, and they're also getting the new books into the system. And so those are some things that they work on, along with just helping with general maintenance in the library, setting up displays and other things. So I've done some work with high school students in that way. And then I also did some work with older high school students. We invited a librarian from the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts, which is in Berkshire County, to come to Charlemont and talk to kids about being ready for college from a library perspective, what it's like to need to access Dropbox or Zotero or other tools that help them with academic work, and kind of help them have a prep session for that. So those are a few of the kinds of activities I've done with young adults at the library. And I think that one of the things that I've loved about all of it is that it's been serious fun. We've gotten to do some learning, we've gotten to have some fun together, and we've just gotten to explore what it would be like to be in different roles. So be a college student, be an employee. So I think all of those things matter for for young adults. And then of course, I've had interactions with the young adults around readers advisory and helping them find the next thing that they're interested in, helping them when they need to move from one room to another, which is actually something that I remember from when I was a kid. I remember when my librarian, whose name was Rosemary, helped me be ready to move from the children's room into the adult and young adults room, to begin exploring new materials. So I think those are all ways that it's important to interact with young adults, and meeting them where they are, I think is really key. So,
well, thank you. Thanks. Great.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Andrea.
You're welcome.
This is Rupert. I have the next question, which is about leadership. As a library director, you'd be expected to show leadership with your staff and with your volunteers, as well as in the community. So I'd like you to describe your leadership style with people you supervise, your leadership style with peers, such as department heads or other organizations.
Sure. So I think there are several key pieces to that. I spent many years working as a part of a team, but also as a team leader in prior work, and so I think that I have a team-based approach that I bring with me from my former work, because when you're working for example, I worked at Boston Medical Center in the Department of Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics, which means that a team is someone like me who has perhaps more of a social work role, and the pediatrician and a nurse practitioner, a physician's assistant, all of these people might be interacting with a given problem or family, or whatever the case may be. So I bring that team approach with me. I think it's really important. That's a really important part of who I am. I also think that I probably have at times a somewhat democratic style. I am interested in hearing ideas from other people. I want to, have, especially if we're brainstorming and problem solving, I want to have as many ideas as possible from as many perspectives as we can, and then narrow down and make a choice about how to move forward. And I also really believe in coaching and mentoring people. I think that it's really important to know, for each individual to have an opportunity to approach a task from a position of strength, and to build on those strengths as they move forward professionally and gain skills. I think that is tremendously important, and those are pieces that I think I bring to a leadership style. I think, I think it's important to recognize that other people, of course, have areas of expertise. My area of expertise might be around the library, but all of you have areas of expertise that you're bringing to the table. And I think it's very important to be able to listen, to respect those areas of expertise, and to work together as a community, because we all want the same goal. The goal is that people have an accessible, warm, welcoming library experience. That's the goal. And I think the goal is to work together from all of our vantage points to make that happen.
Nice, thank you.
Hello, my name is Charles Linsky. I am an Irving resident, and I'm also a member of the Finance Committee. The question I have for you today is about event planning. We have a history of running many events for all age groups and various interests. Tell us briefly about a library event you planned that was successful and one that was not. Also, what would you do differently in the future?
Oh, so start with the strengths or start with the challenges. I can think of 2 events that went that were difficult for. So in one case, I had a local expert on ephemera and on our local history come to the library to provide a workshop. And I wildly underestimated how popular that would be and held the event at our very small library in Charlemont. We have one of the smallest libraries in the, our physical space is quite small. And so, so many people showed up that the space actually was uncomfortable. And although that might be a good problem to have, I think that the end result was that people who had come to visit from other communities who hadn't seen our library before had an unpleasant experience and might have hesitated to return. And so obviously the way to fix that would have been to have registration, which I didn't do. I just held that event as an open event. And so that was clearly a problem. Similarly, I had an event that was a hands-on workshop and was limited to the number of people who could attend because it was hands-on. And I am not sure how this happened, but when the event was posted in the recorder, there was no registration information with it. And I was never certain if that was my error or theirs, but in the end, it didn't matter because people showed up and there was no room for them and I had to turn them away. So I think that those 2 issues highlight how important it is to make sure that when patrons come to the library, there is a place for them and that it is a comfortable and inviting experience for them. But a success story for me has been the Sunday series, which is something that I really love doing. This was our 5th season of having the Sunday series. It was unfortunately cut short this year. And so that, I'm trying to think of how best to explain that. It is a series of 6 or so workshops, an average of 6 workshops that take place at the library through the late fall and into the spring. And they take place on Sunday afternoons from 2 to 4. It's a time that the library is actually usually closed, but it's a very nice time to do more involved programming at the library. All of the activities are hands-on. All of the activities invite in a local or regional artist or artisan who showcases their particular skill and actually teaches that skill. And it's just a wonderful time for the community, for community members to come together, to learn something new, to learn from each other, to learn from somebody who's a local resource, to have fun, and to bring home something beautiful that they've created. So the Sunday series has been really successful and something that I really, really enjoyed providing. So I hope that helps.
I have another question for you here about budgets. and your experience with them. Could you tell us about your experience developing and advocating for budgets with trustees, finance committees, town meetings? What experience managing reporting on a budget over the course of the year do you have?
So I have been managing the budget at the library for the last 6 years. I submit a budget and a budget memo in January as the municipality is getting ready for the upcoming fiscal year. I've also been the reporter for the ARIS report and the state aid report to the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. So I've had experience with completing that reporting. I meet with our trustees meet monthly, so I am reporting to the trustees on the budget, where we are, answering questions about how we're using funds. During the budget season, I've met with the finance committee to discuss our request, why it's important. And I've also answered questions at annual town meetings about the library budget and why there are increases to specific line items or the addition of line items for new things at the library. So again, I hope that is helpful.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Andrea, I'm going to jump in again, just as a time check. We're over half an hour and we're only halfway through the questions. So I appreciate the thoroughness of all your answers, but I'd like you to keep in mind that we do have some time limits, okay?
Okay, I have the next question. I'm Jean Daly. I'm the librarian assistant, and I apologize for my lateness. We had no power this morning. So my question is about technology. What experience do you have maintaining computers, laptops, iPads, etc., and selecting and installing software? What experience do you have working with and maintaining wireless networks, antivirus and anti-malware software, and privacy controls?
Yeah, so again, because I'm a sole librarian, I'm responsible for the computers at the library. I just this week installed virus software on all of our computers. And I am also responsible for adding other software, such as Microsoft Office or other things like that that the computers need. Sorry.
It's a long question.
It was a long question. So at our library, we have support from CW Mars, our Wi-Fi, and is managed by CW Mars. And so I have worked with them to set up the network at the library and to troubleshoot any of the issues that have come up. So while I may not know the answer to every question, I do know how to seek support when I need it. And so, yeah, so I have been in charge of troubleshooting to the best of my ability, and then seeking outside support. So I am responsible at the library for updating all of the computers, making sure that there is virus protection, making sure that all of the programs are running appropriately. And just as an example of where I needed support, I updated the computers once and lost the Wi-Fi and could not figure out why I had lost the Wi-Fi after the update, and submitted a support ticket for got help from CW Mars, and it turned out that the update had eaten the Wi-Fi drivers, which was something I would never have thought of happening. but once I knew that happened, I knew how to, I knew how to get the drivers, I knew how to download them, I knew how to get that started again. But yeah, it was just something I wouldn't have thought of myself. So it's a combination of learning new things, doing the things that you already know, troubleshooting in the ways that you already know, and then keeping things going and working from there. I think there were other parts to that question.
Let's see. It was about laptops, iPads, selecting and installing software, maintaining wireless networks, privacy controls.
So I think libraries do a wide variety of things around privacy control, everything from clearing browser history to having software installed that wipes the computer either at the end of every library session or following each use. And I think those are all possibilities for ensuring that there's privacy. And of course, I think we all know that nothing is perfect in this day and age. So I think it's also important to educate patrons that using open networks such as a library network is not always a good place to, for example, shop or input personal information. So I think that's a combination of educating the public and then providing software that helps ensure that patrons are safe. I have had experience. We have both laptops and desktops at the library, so I also have experience using laptops. At home, I'm pretty Apple-centric. At work, we're pretty Microsoft-centric. So I have experience with both and feel comfortable with both.
Thank you.
So I have a question now about older adults. Can you tell us about your experience working with older adults and found out what engages them, what services and activities you might offer?
So I would say the majority of people who come to the library are older adults in Charlemont. We have a third of the population is elderly in Charlemont, so they're significant library users. So I think that they need all the things that everyone else needs. They need to be engaged about the things that they are curious about. So I think it's important to provide programming that covers a wide range of avenues for engaging older adults. I think many of the older adults who come to the library they're interested in and engaged in learning new things. They want to talk to each other. They like to have the opportunity to socialize, to have discussions, to be engaged by somebody who's leading those discussions, but then also to have the ability to have their own input. So things that I've done, Reader's Advisory, of course, at the library, recommending new books and magazines. I have assisted older adults in using technology and sorry, I just lost something here. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. And so I've had experience helping older adults download and use Libby, or understand how to use an iPad and explore things that they could do with that iPad. And I've included them in all the programming for the Sunday series, which is often a multi-age group, which is really nice. And I think it's important, you know, to have that opportunity as well.
Great. Okay, thanks.
I have another technology question for you. What experience have you had with helping less tech-savvy people with their technology?
Sure. So I have helped people to get email accounts. I've helped people understand how to fill out a form online. I've helped people understand how to use keyboard shortcuts, which is often really helpful. And then I have had people come in and hand me a box with a laptop in it and say, "Can you make this thing work?" And so we've taken it out of the box and done the setup for their new device together. I've also helped people learn to read computer screens and read icons, because I think when you see people using computers on TV, everything is flashing by, things are happening, zip, zip, zip. But actually, you know, sometimes what's really important is slowing down, looking at what's on your screen, and understanding how to read your screen and what's on it. You know, understanding that, you know, that 3 dots or 3 lines is always a menu. That is always going to help you figure out what's available on a particular web page. So doing those kinds of activities. And then, of course, downloading and using library apps that are available, Libby, and others.
Oh, great.
All right, this is me again. I've got a short question about availability. As you probably know, when we had a building to open, we were open Sundays. It's one of our busiest days. And so when we go back to working from our new library building, how do you feel about working on Sundays? Is that going to be an issue for you?
No, I would expect to work on a weekend day. Yeah, so that's not really an issue for me. And our library happens to be open on Saturday. And then sometimes I work both Saturday and Sunday if we also have one of the Sunday series programs at the
Okay.
library. So yeah, I would have an
Perfect.
expectation that's what we would do.
Thank you.
Do we have time for another question, Rupert? You're muted. Rupert, you're muted. Yes, okay. Okay, collaboration. Here in Irving, the director collaborates with the school librarian, the monthly town newsletter, the senior center, etc. Can you speak to your experience and or vision collaborating with other town groups, and what did you learn from your experiences?
So I think that community collaborations are where real strength comes from. They're really key. And so I spoke a little bit about working with the 5th and 6th graders from our local elementary school and our trip to UMass. That was a real collaboration with our local elementary school. One of the teachers came with the kids to the library and came with us to UMass. And so that was a collaboration that I've worked on. I have gone to the senior center and presented at the senior center, talked to seniors about the library and other things as well. So I think it's important for the library not just to be at the library, but for the librarian to be out in the community too. And I would definitely be open to those kinds of collaborations. Last summer, our elementary school had a summer camp, and the kids came in to school during the summer for a camp experience, you know, a recreational and fun experience. And so as part of my summer programming, I went to the summer camp and did activities with the kids there. And that was really fun and a great way to collaborate again with the school. I also, this summer, I was hoping to be able to continue that partnership. But that is not going to happen this summer. And so what I'm trying to do now is I've been in touch with the principal at the school, and I've been trying to put together summer in a box, basically. We have about 160-ish kids at the school, and about 100 families are coming in weekly for food, which is a sign that people are stressed. And so I am hoping to drop off at the school 100 summer kits for kids to pick up with activities and materials to do those activities. And that's a wonderful way to continue that partnership with the school this summer. If Charlemont had a newsletter, I would be so happy to contribute to that. I would see that as an amazing opportunity to tell people about library services, about upcoming programs, about how, what we're doing in this COVID-19 time and how they can access the library, with the idea that we're distanced but not necessarily apart. So I would be thrilled if Charlemont had a newsletter.
Thank you. All
You're
right.
welcome.
Well, we've run over. Is there a particular question that you have for us that you would really like to ask?
Oh, I don't want to hold you up. I had some questions here, but I think if I were going to ask one, I would just ask, I know it looks like you're getting ready for another strategic plan, or were. And so I think that I would ask what your hopes and wishes are for the next 5 years, or just for the library in the future.
Well, I'll try to answer that question. We've been so wrapped up with trying to get a new library set up that we haven't put a lot of thought into it. We will be looking to our new director to take the lead in that and to really draw out all the various community members to try to see how to go forward with this wonderful new facility.
Yeah. Okay. It was
Jane?
very nice to meet all of you.
It was nice to meet you also.
It was nice meeting you.
All righty, so we're going to need to wrap this one up. As you know, we're interviewing numerous candidates, and we're trying to make a decision as soon as possible. Our goal is to try to have as much time as we can for the new incoming director to spend time, even if it's virtually, with Barbara, our current director, for as good of a transition as we can. So she will be retiring, I believe, the end of June. And so we're hoping to get things resolved and moving forward as quickly as possible. Okay?
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and spending this time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thanks, you too.
You too.
Let's see, how do I do this?
There you go.
There. She did it herself, I think.
Yes.
So that's good. We have a couple of minutes before our scheduled next appointment. I am unmuted, good. We have a few minutes before our next scheduled appointment, so this is an opportunity for folks to take a quick break. We're going to keep the meeting open. If you need to take a break, feel free. And I ask that you come back in about 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay.
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 Okay, I can see that our next candidate is in the waiting room. Any questions before we proceed? Can I figure out how to bring her in?
I can help you with that, sir.
Alrighty, thank you.
Erica should be able to unmute and share video now.
Nice. Let's see. Hi, Erica.
Hi there. Can you folks hear me?
I can hear
Yes.
you and I can see you.
Great.
So this is perfect. Thank you. My name is Rupert Roy Clark. I am on the
I
Board
can't
of...
hear anybody.
Oh, hang on. Who can't hear?
Looks like Jane can't hear.
Jane, I'm testing 1, 2, 3, 4 testing. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4 testing. Did your phone somehow, because you're using a phone connection, right?
It's Jane, not
Looks like
Jean.
she's,
Ooh, I can't hear anybody.
I can hear you, Jane.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. I can't hear any of you. Oh, oh my gosh. Incredibly embarrassing. Okay, here we go.
Alrighty. Charlie, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay, here I. Oh,
That's okay.
All right. So here we are. Welcome and thank you for coming for this interview to give us your time.
thank you.
Um,
Thank you for finding a way to do it despite the current situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just to let you know, you can see 5 of us here on camera. There are 2 other members of the community that are dialed in, so you won't be able to see them. That's another one of our trustees, Mackenzie, and Charlie Zielinski. What's going to happen is we're going to go through our series of questions. I'm going to ask each member on the committee to introduce yourself when you ask your question. And just as you know, this is being recorded and taped, and it'll become a public document so that you're aware of that.
Yes.
All righty. Thank you.
Hi, Erica. I'm
Rebecca.
Becky Hubbard, and I'm a resident of Irving, an avid library user, and president of the Friends of the Library.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, and welcome.
Thank you.
The first question is, why be a library director? Why Irving? And what aspect of this position do you expect to like the most, and which aspect the least?
Yeah, it's definitely a good question to start with. I came out one of those weird kids who automatically loved libraries. I loved museums. I loved going to cultural sites. And I think I from a very young age recognized them as cultural sites. This kind of place where we connect with community, but also larger ideas. I also came from a very blue collar working class family who my parents, as the supportive, loving parents they were, really made an effort to bring me to these places that I was interested in. But I could also recognize that they were uncomfortable in them. I grew up originally in Leominster, Massachusetts, and Central Mass, and had very cranky librarians in the children's department. They're not cranky now. I know the director there, and they have done some fabulous changes to the library. But I would go in there, and not only would I not feel welcome, but I noticed that my parents weren't comfortable. My parents weren't comfortable with the process. So I made it a huge effort growing up to become comfortable, to kind of master those spaces that I loved. And as I started working in them, I became really passionate about making them more welcome and inclusive to everyone instantly. I recently had someone who came into my library in Boylston. It was her first time walking in. And as cheesy as this sounds, it made my heart soar. She came in and she said that she felt like the building instantly hugged her. She felt instantly welcomed, which is just such a compliment. I think that's exactly what we want to hear. So I'm definitely passionate about connecting people with information and finding relevance in these sites for them, making them feel seen and heard and represented, exposing them to new ideas. But I think my number one drive is making these inclusive, really fantastic places for the community as a whole to feel quite welcome. I love Massachusetts, absolutely love Massachusetts. I've always lived in Massachusetts. And I love that area of Western Mass. One of my good friends is from Petersham, which isn't too far from you guys.
Right.
I just graduated from Simmons, who has a satellite campus at Mount Holyoke. I spend a lot of time in that area. I don't want to say that the pace is slower, because I don't think that that's fair, but the pace is definitely different from central and eastern Massachusetts, and I love that. I love that within a 20-mile radius, there is such a diverse group of thoughts and lifestyles and things to do. The college area, I think, is a fantastic place to visit. There are a lot of assets in that region, and I've always wanted to relocate there. And the fact that Irving is such a small town community is a huge selling point for me. I am very much a people person, and I need to work in a community that is people driven. Larger library systems and networks understandably have to be much more policy driven, but I know absolutely that's not an environment for me. I think that rules and policies working within the network and within the town are absolutely vital to maintaining such a democratic institution that a library is. But I need people to be the driving force of my everyday, and I think that small towns are the place where that happens and is the best fit for me. So that is why it's definitely a position that I'm very interested in. The fact that you guys have a beautiful new library as well, and it looked like from your strategic plan that was most recently published, as even just the way that the job description was written, it seemed quite clear that you are interested in growth, and that was definitely a selling point for me. I'm very growth motivated and numbers motivated. I think the thing that I'm least looking forward to is starting that position in the middle of a pandemic. Not that there's any good time for a pandemic to be happening, but when I've been working with my director coming up with our reopening plan, I really realized how much we could rely on our pre-existing relationships with the Board of Health, with the school, with our town administrator. Even just personally knowing, my patrons and how they'll respond to certain procedural things that we're putting into place and programs that we're offering is definitely a benefit to me. So in some ways, I think your new director will have some obstacles to overcome there, starting at this time. The benefit, I think, though, is that it will definitely help to expedite familiarity with the area. It will expedite those community relationships for sure. So there will be some benefits to come.
Hi, my name is Jean Daly. Oh, sorry, Dan, were you going to do this one?
I can, whichever you prefer. Go ahead.
Go right ahead, Dan.
Okay. I'm Dan Hammock, a library trustee and finance committee and a variety of things around town. We'd like to ask you something about kind of the current events, things that are going on. You addressed a bit. COVID-19 is affecting library services. We continue to operate from a closed building. What new services would you offer our patrons? What do you see the staff doing?
Yeah, this is a hard time for librarians. I know it's a hard time for everyone, but since access is so important to us, I think we've really struggled in the field to get through this, and we've done a pretty good job so far. I think we certainly would need to continue to monitor recommendations at a local, state, and national level to see what would be appropriate to offer and when. While the library is closed, and while there are staff that are, I assume, working from home primarily, there are a number of online programming options. Librarians are creative people, and where I think we're relying on each other for some ideas, and we're relying on our teams more than ever. Opportunities for online engagement, I think, include things like story times online, as well as certain crafting programs. Something that we've found in Boylston with the children's librarian is that kids just miss talking to our children's librarian and checking in with her. So finding more ways to kind of make those connections happen online. We've also just instituted a letter writing program. I'm hoping to get enough interest to start an actual pen pal program. At this point, it's letters, whether they're birthday wishes from the children's librarian or glitter bombs, which is another something that we've been starting to send. So we're looking for ways to engage the community outside of the internet as well. You know, I think that we had the mistaken assumption in my community of thinking that the digital divide was not as big as it actually is. We're actually working on our strategic plan right now. And it's kind of, it worked out to be a great time to be doing that, because we're recognizing some of the inequities and holes in our community. So it's a good time to be assessing for that reason. So in addition to some of the things that the children's librarian is doing, we have found that some of our pre-existing speakers that I have scheduled are willing to make modifications to deliver it online. We have a writers group with a local professor. She's willing to make modifications to do that in an online venue. So that's something that we're doing. We're lining up some meditation and exercise classes that we're doing in conjunction with our Council on Aging to offer, hosted by the library. We are actually trying our first online virtual concert with a local musician later this month. So there are definite opportunities. And I think that in a lot of ways, this is changing. You can't replace the face-to-face in the library programs. But I do think that this is leaving room for us to consider more avenues for online programming in the future, when we can return to normal library usage, but maybe offer some additional things online for folks who would still continue to use the online sources. Another thing that we're doing, obviously, and I think that is an important thing to continue to push is advocacy for our digital resources, expanding access to those digital resources whenever possible. You guys are in the unique position of opening a new building. When I joined Boylston, we actually just had a major renovation. So I joined the month before our grand reopening, and it coincided with the library also wanting to rebrand ourselves. So I think that that's another thing that could really be focused on right now if it hasn't been addressed already. And staff could be working on new online, whether those are online tutorials or online graphics for social media, even things like bookmarks and flyers for the library when you reopen. It's a great time to deal with some of those nitty-gritty details.
Okay,
Thank you.
So hi, I'm Jane Urban. I'm got my earbuds in now, finally. I'm the school librarian from next door. I'm not an Irving resident, but the school, I personally go to the library quite a bit, and we do work with the library a fair amount. We have programming, we get ILLs, we support each other, I would say. So I have a question, mostly about young adults. Our young adults barely saw the new building before it closed. They are a varied group. They're gamers, serious readers, crafters. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience working with young adults? What have you found that engages them, and what services and activities would you offer through the public library?
Yeah, so I have worked with kids of all ages. but young adults specifically, really my entire career, whether that has been in an academic library setting, in a museum setting as the assistant director of education at Sturbridge Village. When I joined the team at Boylston, it was a new position that I was given, and there was no teen or preteen programming in place whatsoever. And that was a huge priority of mine. And I created the current teen program. Before I launch into programming too much though, teens are a tricky group for sure. And I think that it's really important for a library to be focused on ways to engage kids before they even reach teens. I think that visiting schools and forging those relationships with school librarians are absolutely vital. I just actually, the day the governor announced that the schools would be closed for the remainder of the year, I was in a Zoom call with our school librarians at the time, talking to them about what we could do to them, what situation they were in, how we could be of help. We at the library that I'm currently at have kids, every kindergartner makes a field trip to the library. They do a program, they get a library card. Their parents have the option of signing up for our electronic newsletter. We had just instituted that program the year I joined. And a week after the first kindergarten field trip, I saw a number of those families then visiting the library who had never been there before. We started also doing a field trip for third graders. And we do this in conjunction with the historical commission that is in the town. So third graders, at the end of the year, they unfortunately had to miss it this year, but at the end of the year, they come to the center of town and they visit a series of historical buildings. The library happens to be one of them. Again, they are coming into the library. At this point, we've caught up so that every third grader already has a library card. They came when they were in kindergarten and got that library card. They do an activity, they do a scavenger hunt in the library. It's another way for them to meet us, to experience the space if they're not already library users, to maybe drag their parents in. So the ultimate hope is that by starting these relationships early, by getting them to become library users early, they're comfortable when they're teens. I just this year we had planned to visit the local high school in Boylston. Our middle and high school is connected, and all incoming middle schoolers go to like a boot camp in June with their parents. The library has a table there to talk and be a resource, to have some literature, to get people signed up for library cards. And then this fall, we'll be there in either September or October on lunch breaks with a table, again, trying to be accessible to start to make those connections. I think that teens really struggle when they're in a space. They struggle with asking questions, and they struggle with feeling comfortable. So making sure that you are as friendly as possible with kids is a very high priority for me. Unfortunately, in my current library, we don't have much of a dedicated teen space. I'm not sure if your new building will have this, but that has been a struggle for us. Because you want to give teens the ability to be loud sometimes, to have those social interactions, to feel like they are welcome. And it has been tricky to do that in our current situation. We found ways around it, for sure. The programming aspect that I started discussing in the beginning, During my first year, I came up with a lot of program ideas that I did, and I established a great base of teens that were coming. They were primarily younger teens, I want to say around 13. They were coming regularly and kind of automatically, which was great. It proved to me that there was definitely a need for it. We were addressing it. I figured out what worked and what didn't work. We do not have teen programs over the summer. We just don't have a lot of program attendance over the summer, so that's why we don't do it. So I planned over the summer my following year of programs and events, and I thought I had it all set and settled. And the teen group that I had start with me again in the fall was now totally different from the teen group that I had the year before. And they didn't have the same interests and focus. So everything that I had planned got scratched, and I quickly kind of had to adjust to what their interests were. The year before I had a lot of crafters. This year, no crafters. They wanted nothing to do with crafts. They didn't know how to use scissors even. So I think when you're working with teens, when you're working with the public in general, but especially with teens, flexibility is key. Offering a diverse range of things to sort of see what sticks and what doesn't, and trying to fill a little bit of all of those needs. We recently do not have many teens who are interested in a book club. There are a few, but not enough to sort of warrant an ongoing book club for teens. So we solve this by a few times a year offering a book club for teens.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thanks. That's very comprehensive. Thanks. Okay. Who's next? Your move.
Yeah, I keep remoting myself because of background noise. Number 4, yes, leadership. As a library director, you would be expected to show leadership with your staff and with your volunteers, as well as within the community. So I'd like you to describe your leadership style with people you supervise and with peers, such as other department heads or other organizations.
Yeah, I think a good leader shares her vision and communicates that effectively, and kind of inspires people along the way by kind of enthusiastically communicating that, so that you're gaining interest and support as you go along. And I do think that communication is key. But when I think about really effective managers that I've had, or times when, as a manager, I feel like I've had the most effective and rewarding moments, it tends to be in situations where I'm accessible and I'm hands-on. However, I'm also allowing for a lot of autonomy, providing kind of a safe space where I mentioned earlier, librarians are creative. Providing that safe space where people are able to take chances and to get as creative as possible is really important to me. But again, just to go back to that word flexibility, an effective manager absolutely needs to be flexible. I have 3 library assistants right now who I manage, as well as a library page who's a high school student. And each one has their own slightly different management style that they need and prefer. So I think that what makes me probably unique in that area is that I really cater my style to their needs, so that we can get the best out of each of them, and maintain really good teamwork.
Hello, I'm Charles Zielinski. I'm an Irving resident, and I'm also on the Finance Committee. My first question is about event planning. We have a history of running many events for all age groups and various interests. Tell us briefly about a library event that you planned that was successful and one that was not. And also, what would you do differently in the future?
Yeah, I was so excited to see that you guys had this question on here. A lot of people don't realize that event planning is such a huge part of librarianship, and it happens to be one of my favorite parts. I think that it is the events that we have in the library that, I mean, obviously resources and access to collections is huge, but it's through these events that you can have personal moments. And I think those memory making moments also happen in libraries through events, which is just one of the reasons why they're so important. I love figuring out what specific audiences and communities find interesting. It, it, it's a constant learning process, and I love that process for sure. And I have experience with a lot of different types of programming, whether it's in my museum background or in the public library background that I have. A lot of programming for budget reasons, I'm putting on myself. And whether that's things like seed starter programs, which I did last year. This year we've had a lot of success with adult crafting programs. Before the pandemic hit, I was averaging out about one per month, and they were actually filling up, which was great. There have been fantastic teen programs. We did one teen program that was a stuffed animal taxidermy, where the teens cut apart stuffed animals and mounted them to these wooden boards that they painted and decorated. And I had one of my teens actually speaking at a legislative breakfast, and he had asked me to help him write the speech beforehand, so I thought I knew exactly what he was going to say and do. But he got up there and kind of ad-libbed a bit, and he brought his stuffed animal taxidermy and showed it at the legislative breakfast as a fun and exciting thing he did at a library program. So that was nice. That made me feel good. But I think one of the programs that I'm absolutely the most proud of is the Worcester Art Museum tours that my library does. Now, we pre-existingly had passes to the Worcester Art Museum. Worcester is about a 20 to 30 minute drive from where we are in Boylston. And we also have a trustee member who happens to be a docent at the Worcester Art Museum. We were chatting one day and we said, hey, it would be really great if we worked out some tour. He agreed to lead the tour, we could use our library passes. I talked with our council on aging. They actually have a small bus that they have access to, and they have volunteers who help drive it. So we co-sponsored it with the Council on Aging. Folks could get the bus at the library, use the passes that the library provides, and then get a tour of the museum from a docent. We thought we would do it once and that would be enough. It was really successful. We decided to do it for 3 months. It has continued to be successful. We now actually do a monthly tour because it's been such a popular program. So I think that's a great example of a library program that has worked out. One that has not worked, I'm not going to say that it's a failure, but it was not as successful. I planned a Meet Your Civic Leaders program that I thought would be wildly successful. I had heard from some members in the community that they wanted more easy access to civic engagement. They wanted the process to be more transparent. I had our town administrator as well as our chief of police and the chief of the fire department come. It was filmed by the local access news station. I planned for a big event and we
Uh-oh. Oh no.
I thought it was just me.
I can't hear.
No. Oh, Erica.
show up.
Oh, I'm hearing her a little. No.
Well, perhaps Erica can hear us, but we can't hear you and your video is stopped.
Let's see.
Ugh.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
looks like she lost her video.
Wonder if she's going to try again. Re-entry.
All right, so I see that, Eric, I see that you're still logged in, but for some reason you're all in italics, and I don't know what that means.
It means she's offline.
Okay.
It looks like the connection's lost.
Uh-oh.
Okay, she's got 2 logins now.
Oh,
Hi.
she's
There
back.
she is.
Hi.
Hi,
Sorry
Erica.
about that. I have my phone lined up ready to call in. So if you guys can't hear me or see me, I can give that a try.
Okay,
Nope, we
we can
see
hear
you.
you fine right now.
We're good? Okay. All
And
right.
you cut out when you were talking about how big an event you were going to have with the chief of police and the town administrator and the fire chief and all those guys.
Okay. So I went on talking for quite a while before I realized I wasn't with you anymore. So I was planning for a big crowd, but we only had 3 show up. And it was definitely not the event that I had planned for. I had also, because I had planned on a big event, I had left a lot of time open for Q&A with the audience. And I was the facilitator of this conversation, which was being filmed with the local access station. It ended up becoming a fantastic conversation with the 3 patrons that were there. It was a wonderful dialogue. And because it was recorded, and because our local access station tracks their views and where they publish the link, I do know that it had a pretty high viewage rate. So it was accessed. The patrons that came, there were 2 regular library users and 1 that I had never seen before. So we did get someone new to the library. Those 2 regular patrons both came to me on separate events afterwards and told me how great it was for them, how much they enjoyed it, which for me makes it a success. And also the town administrator, the chief of police and fire department, all used it in their town letter at the end of the year. So they filled some of their kind of civic involvement that they were proud to talk about. And it also, I did already have a relationship with our town administrator, but not really with our chief of police and fire department. And it opened the door for me. A few months later, when we had our library card sign up week, I actually invited them back to the library to take, we set up a library card selfie booth. So I invited them to come in uniform to take pictures of them with their library card. And I think having that introduction to them and that relationship that really started with this meeting was definitely a factor in that. So I'm not going to call it a failure. It just didn't go according to plan, which is something you always have to be prepared for with public programs.
I have another question for you about budgets. And can you tell us your experiences developing, advocating for budgets with trustees or finance committees, town meetings like that? And what's your experience managing and reporting on a budget over the course of the year?
Yeah, I would love to talk about that. it's a big aspect of the job for sure. When I mentioned that I joined Boylston at our grand reopening when we had a major renovation. Boylston is somewhat unique in having a board of trustees, obviously, and then we have a library foundation board, which is a major fundraiser for the library. And we also have our friends group, who does fundraising, but is more involved in more involved in programs, and more involved in sort of nitty-gritty aspects of volunteering and the book sale and all those things. The foundation is solely interested with fundraising. The foundation was a huge aspect of the renovation. We did not go with MBLC grants at all because of the historical integrity of the building that the trustees and the foundation were really keen on preserving. We found after the renovation that the foundation didn't have as clear of a focus on what they were fundraising for, but still wanted to continue fundraising efforts. And there were some competing interests with the Friends group and their fundraising interests at this time. The good news is that we have two groups who want to raise funds and be involved in the library. It involved some definite work with getting the two groups to sort of align and join forces. It took about a year to pull off effectively, and it also involved a lot of budget work. It coincided with a time that our library was increasing the programs we were offering, and therefore had a need for an increased budget. So I had to work with the trustees to determine what they ideally wanted as far as programming, what was justified, and then work with our foundation and our friends group to determine what that budget could be. I worked closely with our children's librarian to determine what her expected cost would be for the year. I'm in charge of the teen and adult programming. So we created an anticipated budget. To be honest with you, since working there, it's the first time that we've also known clearly what our budget is, which has been a really huge priority for me, defining exactly what our materials and programming budget is. As far as town meeting and the coordinating of the town budget, it's my library director who handles that. So that would be an area that I definitely feel up to the task, but that would be an area that would be newer for me. I am familiar with the process. It's something that I had to be trained for to be able to fill in for my director in case she wasn't able to. So that also includes the payroll and the monthly bill structure that we do at the library.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Jean Daly. I'm the librarian assistant. I have a question on
Hi, Jean.
technology. What experience do you have maintaining computers, laptops, iPads, etc., and selecting and installing software? What experience do you have working with and maintaining wireless networks, antivirus and anti-malware software, and privacy controls?
Well, it would be great if my computer crashed while I was in the middle of this technology response. We've all had to become technology experts as we have so many online meetings every day. My library that I currently work in is quite small. We do not have a public computer space permanently set up. We do, however, have 5 laptops, which we lend out for in-library use. We also have a patron printer that is networked to those laptops. And we have a number of iPads that are set up primarily in the children's room. And these are linked with games that are compatible, like Osmo games. If you're familiar with Osmo, they have certain setups. We have 3 personal printers and we have 4 office computers that are set up to the private network. CW Mars does provide quite a bit of resources, including tech help. They will come out and set up your network and help with troubleshooting. So I am very familiar with that process of going to them for help that is outside of my skill set. When it comes to day-to-day troubleshooting, whether that's we actually just installed some new circulation desktops. I'm very comfortable with that, helping patrons come in with printing issues. We have one large fax machine / photocopier / printer that we also maintain. That is a beast to work with and needs to be replaced soon, but familiarity with all of those things is absolutely necessary.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a question about older adults. I know you've referred already to various programs you've worked, and I know in the thinking about time, but you could tell us a little bit about your experience working with older adults. What have you found engages them? What things you might want to offer them through the Irving Public Library? Anything to add, I suppose, to what you've told us about?
We find in Boylston that seniors make up a pretty large portion of our patron base. So I really value that relationship with the Council on Aging that I have. We co-host programs quite a bit, and using them as a resource because they're often approached for programs that are of interest to us at the library. So it's great to maintain that relationship. We've had huge success with programs. We had a representative from the state come and talk about the Real ID changes and guidelines. We've had folks come and talk about brain health and memory loss. We've had great success with healthcare and Medicare programs that we've done. Also some exercise programs that have things like gentle yoga or chair exercises have been really popular. And seniors also, we offer a variety of book club programs, and I would say that seniors tend to make up the majority of that population.
Great. Thank you. Okay.
So I have another question
You're
about
welcome.
technology. Can you share with us some experiences you've had with helping less tech-savvy people with their technology?
Yeah, that happens a lot. And what I see most often is help with cell phones and help with e-readers, like Kindles and Nooks. To a lesser extent, I've seen help with laptops. Also, even sometimes things like those digital picture frames. I recently had a patron bring me her digital picture frame and ask for help getting it set up. I think that's, some larger libraries actually have policies that you aren't allowed to assist patrons with their personal devices because of liability. Another reason why I love working in small libraries is because you get to do that. And I think it's a huge selling point. If you're talking about how easy it is to use Libby and Hoopla, being able to set that up for someone on their phone or on their e-reader is a good selling point for sure. So yes, that's a service I like to offer. We even offer sometimes just scheduled tech help time to kind of advertise that that's a service that we do. And it's very successful.
I was ready on the mute button this time. Doesn't happen often. All right. Next question is about availability. We've been open Sundays for a long time, and it's actually one of our busiest days. We get a lot of folks coming in on Sundays and families and so forth. when we actually have a building that we can invite people to again, we plan to continue that. So do you have any, how do you feel about working Sundays? Is that an issue for you?
Yeah, that's understood. My work in museums, you know, the weekends and holidays are the busiest time, and it's an understood reality for sure. Yes, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question on collaboration. Here in Irving, the director collaborates with the school librarian, the monthly town newsletter, the senior center, etc. Can you speak to your experience and or vision collaborating with other town groups, and what did you learn from your experiences?
Yeah, the collaboration, I think, is one of the most important aspects for leaders in libraries. For one thing, you're helping to justify your relevance in a community by being able to approach community members and talk about what you're doing and ask what you can offer them. It is also provides amazing opportunity for networking. Having pre-existing relationships with people also inevitably brings resources your way. You never know who could come and do a program, who has some service to offer. You know, when I was chatting with the trustee that day and found out that he was a docent at the Worcester Art Museum, and that kind of turned into this fantastic program that we're able to put on and have people from, you know, all these different surrounding towns come and try to do. I think that individual people, as well as departments as a whole, are the best resources that a community has. And I love finding ways to mutually benefit from those relationships. In addition, you know, I touched earlier on talking with the school librarians, the historical commission in town. The historical commission has been a great resource. They've been willing to host some genealogy groups. Talking to them also gives me good fodder for our electronic newsletter and our Facebook page, where we're able to cross promote things, which is also really beneficial, and get audiences that we might not normally get in the library. So that's hugely important to me. The gardening club in Boylston, which is also huge, is another thing that I've been working on, getting them more involved in certain programs. So they've been willing to sponsor and host programs as they've been getting more involved too.
Cool.
There, I'm back. Thank you very much. So our last question really is for you. It's an opportunity for you to ask us questions, or if there's something crucial that you think we should know about you that we didn't manage to ask, now is your chance.
I did notice it looked like your strategic plan is up in this year. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Have there been any starts so far at addressing the next strategic plan? And I'm also curious to know if you feel like you've achieved all your goals from your current strategic plan.
I'll take a stab at this, and I invite others to join in. We've been so focused on getting a new building up and running and a new director for the new building that we've not quite yet shifted our focus to the next strategic plan. So obviously we'll be expecting the new library director to take the lead on that and to involve the trustees as well as other important groups in the community. We feel like we've been wildly successful. The growth of our library over the last 10 years has been absolutely astonishing, and the support that we've built in the town for the new library building is also immense. So we feel like we've been very successful. Anyone want to join or add? No? More questions?
What do you guys see as the biggest challenge facing your new director?
Oh, coming on into a brand new building where we were only in the building for 10 days. So anything that's going to go wrong hasn't gone wrong yet. And also coming into a job with COVID-19 being the big thing and not being able to get into the building.
I don't know if it's a challenge, but it's a reality for whoever the new director is to become somewhat familiar with the wide variety of programs that the library has been offering, dozens of them. I think everything from Chuckles the Clown to Abigail Adams and presentations and Elvis impersonators and Decorate the Pumpkins, working with Recreation Commission and others to become familiar with a wide variety of things we don't want to lose, but also bring to us new things that perhaps we hadn't thought of or would be appropriate for a library. I don't know, it's a challenge, it's just something that we kind of expect.
Anyone else care to add?
I would just like to say, I think the challenges that may face the new library director are going to be exciting because of the new library and the more space we have now for programming. I think the community is eager to attend those programs, and I think they will be welcomed. And I think that is a plus to help the new director settle into Irving, because I think the town has been very supportive with the new library, and I think they're very anxious to see what the next steps are and what the library can offer now that we're in a bigger building and have more room. So I think it may be somewhat of a challenge, but I think it's going to be a positive challenge for the new director.
Becky, does the new building have a dedicated meeting or event space?
Yes, it does. We have a meeting room, a business room that can also be used as a study room or collaborative room. Then we have a study room. Then there is a teen space, which is new for the kids. Our old library was just a single room with a janitor's closet being used as the children's library. So the teens are very excited about having their own space. And there's also space for the adults. And then we have a children's room. And then there's another room for crafting and for STEM projects. So
wow.
It's really exciting. And I think everybody is looking forward to the next steps in this new library. So I think the new director will find everybody very eager and willing to help out and make the library a success.
Yeah, that's a drastic change from your previous building.
Yes.
And so exciting. You guys must be chomping at the bit to open up and to use all of those spaces.
Yes.
That's great. I know that we're running out of time. There's one more question that I wanted to ask today, and that's if you know of any budget effects at this point that will impact your next fiscal year. Any changes that may have happened due to COVID.
Charlie might chime in. I'm speaking. I don't speak for the finance committee, but I'm on the committee. We're like everyone else, just waiting to see. We know state revenues are going to be down, so somewhere they're not going to be able to fund as much as they've been funding. Shouldn't affect our, basic library grant, which isn't a lot. And we just don't know how it'll affect other budgets. People did appropriate a lot of money for this new library, and I'm reasonably sure they're not going to say, well, just close the door. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Irving's financial situation. We're in a uniquely better situation than many places, tax base wise. Again, I can't speak for what the state is or isn't going to do and how that'll affect. They may just decide to stop funding school transportation or something, or payment of taxes, whatever. We don't know. I expect the library will be adequately funded.
There's a lot of hurry up and wait and see that we're all experiencing right now. Yeah.
Charlie, did you want to add anything?
No, actually, Dan pretty much said what I was going to say.
Sorry, Charlie.
No, that's totally fine.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you coming in. We all do, and joining us through this this method. Just in terms of the future, we're hoping to move along fairly quickly. Our current director, Barbara, is retiring the end of June, and we want to give as much overlap time as possible for the incoming director to interact in whatever ways are safe, to prepare themselves for the challenges and excitement to come. So thank you very much for coming, and we'll reach out to you again as soon as we possibly can.
All right. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate the chance to talk to you. And I
Nice to
hope
meet
you have
you,
a great
Erin.
weekend.
Yes,
too.
nice to meet you.
Thank you.
You as well.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so we have I think the schedule that I'm looking at is wrong. I think we postponed our next candidate so there could be a lunch break. Is that true?
Yes, we did. Yep.
Do you know when the next candidate, does anyone know when they're supposed to start?
12:30.
12:30.
12:30?
I thought it was 12:45. Am I wrong?
12:30.
Okay.
Ooh. Is Brian there? I did think he was going to give us a little more of a lunch break, but no.
That's not a lot of break.
Your interview went longer than it was supposed to. You were supposed to wrap the last interview at noon.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
All right then.
Okay.
So I would entertain a motion to take a recess until 12:25.
I second.
Moved by Daniel, seconded by Jane.
Okay. I'll take it or give it to Jean.
Anybody.
All right, so we will be in recess for 10 minutes, and then we will come back again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So do I
So
actually?
You can.
Okay.
Okay, this session is being recorded. We just had a brief recess, and we are getting ready to proceed with our next candidate. Before we bring them into the conversation, are there any comments or questions from the committee?
No?
Did you see how I stalled there to get another bite? All right. So my understanding is what's going to happen is we're going to have one more interview. And after that interview, we're going to have a discussion about how to move forward with our selection and recommendation process. So I'd like you all to be thinking about ways that that might work for you. And Dan, I was wondering if you could maybe take the lead in that discussion.
Okay.
Just so that you're not surprised too much later.
Okay.
Okay. Brian, I think we are ready for you to bring our next interviewee in.
If that worked correctly, Caitlin should be able to unmute and also share video feeds.
Caitlin, I see that you're unmuted. Oh, and I can see you too.
Hi.
There.
Hi.
Hi, Caitlin. I'm Rupert Roy-Clark. I am one of the trustees of the Irving Public Library. And I want to thank you for coming in to join us in this online interview. We will spend 45 or 50 minutes asking you a series of questions, and at the end, you'll have an opportunity to ask us questions as well. I'm going to ask all the members of the committee to introduce themselves before they ask their first question. And Caitlin, just to let you know, you're seeing only 5 of the 7 of us. Charles is on the phone, and I believe Mackenzie is also there, able to hear and speak, but just without the video.
Sure.
Okay, so carry on.
Hi, Caitlin. I'm Becky Hubbard, and I am an Irving resident, an avid library user, and I'm also president of the Friends of the Library. And the first question that we have is, why be a library director? Why Irving? And what aspect of this position do you expect to like the most, and which aspect the least?
So I've been working in libraries for 9 years. I've been an administrator for 4, and I'm ready to steer the ship, I guess you could say. So, you know, I've done my time, and while all communities are different, I feel like I have the skills that one needs to go to a community, kind of engage and see what the needs are, and work, figure out who to work with to help fulfill those needs. So I feel like I am confident with my ability to do that. As far as the position, I have a branch background. I worked in the Mason Square branch library in Springfield for 5 years, and I managed it for 3. And in a branch environment, everyone has to wear a lot of hats and do a little bit of everything. And I really like that. I also really like having a public-facing position where I get to see our patrons every day and engage with them and really get to know them and their needs. So that was something I really enjoyed about the job description. And that's something I really enjoy about being a librarian too. So I think that'd be my favorite part of the position. As far as things I like the least, I thought about this for a while and had a hard time. But the only thing I could come up with is that somehow I'm always the person who shovels snow. So I'm always the one who shovels the walk, and I don't like it, but I do it, and I will continue doing it. So I guess that's what I'll like the least, but I will pony up and put on my snow boots for you guys.
Okay.
Today.
Thank you very much, Caitlin.
You're welcome. Thank you, Becky.
You're welcome. I'm Dan Hammock, a library trustee and the finance committee member, and other things too. But I have a question about the current events, things that are going on with COVID-19 affecting library services. If we continue to operate from a closed building, what new services would you offer our patrons, and what do you see staff doing?
So I have to say I was impressed by the number of things that the library is currently doing. I did notice that Andrea is doing story time, that there's a brown bag book club, as well as some computer, some iPad classes that are happening. So I wanted to give you guys props for really hitting the ground running with providing digital services. I think for now, you know, figuring out how to expand those services will be important. Working with local organizations, social service organizations to help get resources that people will need as far as figuring out unemployment and also just those like basic needs, making sure that those needs are getting met and that we're providing that information to people. Probably pretty soon, curbside pickup is going to be the first wave of reopening. So making sure that a limited number of library staff can get back into the building, process materials, and figure out a protocol for safely starting to re-engage. I think it's also important for staff to be active in curating content for our social media. If I were to start there, I would probably do a social media survey to make sure that we're actively engaging our community in all the platforms that they're using. You know, if we need to get a TikTok, like we'll get a TikTok, all that sort of thing. We'll also need to take a look at the space. I know we have this gorgeous new building, but I'm sure it wasn't laid out with social distancing in mind. So it'd be important for the staff to kind of do walkthroughs and figure out how we can temporarily rearrange spaces that they will be safe for the public. And thankfully, there's been a lot of really excellent guidance from ALA and from the state level as to how we can go about reorganizing and reopening. So none of this is happening in a vacuum, and I'll be making sure to listen to what the best advice is and best practices. Figure it out.
Well, hi, I'm Jane Urban. I am not an Irving resident, but I am the librarian over at the elementary school. And I use the public library quite a bit myself, and we use it through the school. We get lots of interlibrary loans. We do collaborate on programs with both Jean and Andrea and Barbara. So that's who I am. And I have a question about young adults. Our young adults barely saw the new building before it closed. They are a varied group. They're gamers and serious readers and crafters. So if you could tell us a little bit about your experience working with young adults and what have you found that engages them, and what service and activities would you offer through the Irving Public Library?
Sure. So I just had the opportunity to hire a totally fantastic teen librarian where I currently work. I have a lot of experience developing teen programs. So at my current library, we have a robust and very food-driven teen advisory board. It's weird. Every time we have tacos, they all come running. So you know, I think it'd be really great to start. I think that would be one of the first things I would make sure was up and running once I started in Irving. You know, I think it's important for the teens to have some say in like how the space is used and how, you know, make them feel like they have ownership of this space. So I think a teen advisory board would be helpful with that. You know, and different teen groups are in different places are different. They're, you know, not a one size fits all sort of thing. We had a very thriving Yu-Gi-Oh club in Springfield, but the teens in Vernon think Yu-Gi-Oh's dumb. So it's about just kind of figuring out what the teens like. I think it's really important to have to build a one-on-one rapport with these kids. You know, like when I was in Springfield, I was the first face that teens saw when they first entered the library, and I made sure to know their names and to know what their interests were. And I developed programming and our collections based on their individual interests. And that led to some really wonderful, you know, patron relationships. So yeah, other things, I currently have a lot of craft programs. Teams really like to upcycle and make tote bags and all sorts of stuff. So I have a lot of tricks up my sleeve for teens, and, you know, just figure out what Irving teens like, I guess.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Oh, one more thing. One thing we're doing that I'm really kind of proud of in Vernon right now is we've set up a Discord server, which is like it's like a special gaming platform where teens can chat and engage in a like kind of a locked room environment. And that's been a really great way for them to engage during this pandemic. So as they really miss each other, you know, they miss going to school, they miss seeing their peers. So assuming that this whole thing lasts through the summer, I'm sure teens will be really hungering for that kind of engagement. So I would look towards setting up something similar in Irving.
Oh, great, thank you. Oh.
All right, I'd like to ask you a question about leadership.
Sure.
As library director, you would be expected to show your leadership with staff and volunteers, as well as within the community. So I'd like you to describe your leadership style with people that you supervise, and also your leadership style with peers, such as directors or heads of other agencies.
Sure. So I guess the thing I like about myself is that I'm good at being both a visionary leader, but also at kind of distilling big ideas into nitty-gritty protocols, policies, and action plans. But it's really important to me that I lead by example for my staff and for the community as well. I work really hard. My job's important to me, and it helps define who I am as a person in a community. I'm very empathic. I try to display empathy towards my patrons and also towards my staff. And I'm flexible. So I try to model all of these behaviors in the hopes that my staff will see that those are my values and that those are important things for them to model as well. That said, I think different staff members thrive under different kinds of management. You know, I've had like really great librarians who have like a million ideas, and all they need me to say is like, okay, well, how are you going to fund that, and who are you going to work with, and take them from up here to like, you know, the nitty gritty practical stuff. And I have some staff members who just want to come in and do their job, and like that's it. And you have to approach those people differently, and that's fine. I think figuring out how to engage people's strengths and make sure that they are engaged in their work is really important. One thing I really like about working in libraries and working in a social services environment is that none of us are competing. Our colleagues aren't competing for contracts. We're not trying to, you know, one up each other, which I think makes for a really collegiate and like convivial environment. So I have generally like really great relationships with my colleagues, and that's, you know, we're not making the big bucks. We're here to like help people and to do good in the community, and I think that lends itself to you know, a shared sense of purpose. Let me see. It's also important to me that my staff enjoy their work and feel like they're able to grow. So that's, you know, something I try to emphasize as well. I want to have a positive environment that they look forward to going to each day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm Charles Zielinski. I'm an Irving resident, and I'm also on the Finance Committee. My question is about event planning. We have a history of running many events for all age groups and various interests. Tell us briefly about a library event you planned that was successful and one that was not. And also, what would you do differently in the future?
Okay, so I've been doing event planning for 6 years, and it's one of my favorite things. So the last event that I ran in the library before we shut down ended up being a smashing success. It was called Swing into Spring, and it was an all-day event, festival type event that involved multiple different parts of the library. It ran from 10 to 3, and with an emphasis on fitness and also gardening. So we started off the day with a paint a pot program for families, where kids of all ages could paint a flower pot. We then had a farmer from Strong Farm come in and do a quick demonstration and discussion for families about how to grow vegetables and herbs in raised garden beds. At the same time, downstairs, we had our beloved gym teacher, Miss Pat, do a family fitness program. And then we had an Irish band play in our reading room, which was a great success, followed by family yoga in the programming room, and then a silly songs and dance movement program to cap the whole thing off. I think we had over 120 people filtering in throughout the day. And because we had programs for all different ages, we were able to tap into a majority of our regular families, as well as a number of seniors who came in for our gardening programs. It was also opening day of our seed lending library, which is very popular, which we started last year. As far as programs that haven't gone very well, I had a concert a couple years ago in which I asked the community music school in Springfield to highlight some of our local students. And I guess I just wasn't clear about my expectations. When I said I expected them to play for 45 minutes and then to pack their stuff up for 15, you know, I guess that wasn't made clear because the students played for 15 minutes and then they started blasting Nirvana to the chagrin of my senior patrons. And then they took 45 minutes to get off the stage for the next band to come in. So I think there's clearly some miscommunication in that whole thing. And in the future and the numerous concerts I have set forth, I've made sure to be very clear in my invoices and contracts to say, this is how long it will take to set up, this is how long you will play, and this is, you know, what our expectation is. So thankfully, that has never happened again. No one has ever blasted Nirvana at any other library event. I've done a lot of different kinds of events, so if there's something more specific you would like me to speak to, I can do that as well, if you'd like.
Okay.
I think there are more questions later on that will address the events.
Okay.
Our next question is about budgets. Could you tell us about your experience developing and advocating for budgets with trustees, finance committees, town meetings, like that? What's your experience managing and reporting on a budget over the course of a year?
Sure. So my current director and I develop the budget together. We keep track of it in Munis. We report on it monthly, and we reconcile our credit card receipts and such weekly. I also have a really strong background in getting grant funding, so and raising money for the library. I think in the last 5 years, I did the math, I've raised $45,000 in grant funds to augment our budget. I also have a pretty good success rate with negotiating with vendors. Last fiscal year, I saved $1,000 just by negotiating well with our database vendors. I take spending taxpayer money very seriously, and I think it's important to demonstrate to the finance committee and to stakeholders and to the town that that is the case. I think it's also important to demonstrate throughout the year the importance of the library and our services and our materials and our events to the vitality of the community. So advocacy year-round constantly is a really important thing in my mind. And I've done that both as a assistant director and also as a board member of the East Hampton Public Library. And incidentally, they just asked me to be the treasurer of the East Hampton Public Library Board. So it'll be interesting to come at library budgets from both directions. So I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Jean Daly, and I'm the library assistant. I have a question on technology. What
Sure.
experience do you have maintaining computers, laptops, iPads, etc., and selecting and installing software? What experience do you have working with and maintaining wireless networks, antivirus and malware software, and privacy controls?
So I have been the go-to person at my last 2 libraries for troubleshooting and maintaining computers. I'm lucky to have worked with both an in-house IT department and also like a town IT department. So, but we did just order all new computers for Vernon, so I have like a lot of up-to-date knowledge about, you know, what the best stuff to purchase is. I also have a lot of experience setting up grant-funded computer projects. So I have experience putting privacy settings on both iPads and also computers so that patrons can only access certain programs or web pages. Yeah, so I mean, when I was in Springfield, I was in charge of all of that stuff. If anything broke, it was my job to fix it because IT usually didn't come in for like 2 hours. So it's usually my role. So I have a lot of experience with that.
Okay, well, I guess I have a question now about, again, about programming and with older adults. And yeah, if there are other things you wanted to add here, and there may even be a few other places if you want to talk about other events, but tell us about your experience working with older adults. What have you found engages them? And what services and activities would you like to offer through the Irving Public Library?
Sure. I love working with seniors. Some of my favorite regulars are seniors, and I think I cherish the most having folks from the neighborhood just come in and plop themselves down and chatting with me by my desk. But I have a really great relationship with the senior center in Vernon. Bi-monthly, I go there and do book a librarian services where I work one-on-one with seniors to troubleshoot their devices. I recently taught a woman to learn how to FaceTime her best friend in like a couple states away. It was such a joy. I also do computer classes. I recently did a grant-funded class on how to find reliable health information online for seniors, and that worked really well. Most of our patrons in Vernon are seniors, so by default, almost all my programming is kind of senior programming. I have a group of women who come to almost all of my crafting programs, mostly to gossip, but that's fine. Everyone needs their place, so get their chat on. Again, the one-on-one programming there is also really popular, so even if folks don't go to the senior center, if they want one-on-one services, they'll come directly to me at the library. I do a lot of concerts, a lot of like jazz concerts, a lot of classical concerts. So figuring out what kind of music folks want. In Vernon, they just want some bluegrass. So bluegrass is what I give the seniors. A lot of our seniors are also caretakers. So I recently partnered with a local organization that helps advise people on stuff like your legal responsibilities as a caretaker when it comes to like health proxies and stuff. So, I figure out what people need, and if that's what they need, then try to collaborate and provide services to fulfill those needs.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Sure.
I have another question on technology. Can you share with us some experiences you've had with helping the less tech-savvy people with their technology?
Well, I had a guy come in with a floppy disk a couple weeks ago. We helped him, it works. So almost all of my experience in Springfield, and actually working with patrons in Vernon too, is helping people who don't know how to use computers. I've helped people, actually I have quite a lot of experience in workforce development, so I help a lot of people write resumes, apply for jobs online, get set up with an email address. I've helped people sell cars on Craigslist. I've helped people find apartments and access immigration services. So I've done a lot, help people access their online classes and submit papers. Still downloading PDFs is still the #1, I think, problem that people have, but yeah, I've done a lot of that. And I have the patience of a saint, I promise.
Thank you. I got a question for you about availability. In Irving, we're open 5 days a week, and Sunday is our busiest day. Well, when we had the building, it was our busiest day. And when we have the building open again, it'll probably continue that way. So I just want to check in with you to see if you have any issues or concerns about working on the weekend. Sunday?
No, Sundays are fine. I work Saturdays when I was in Springfield, and it is what it is. I don't mind, and if it's the busiest day, then it's gotta stay. Yeah, fine by me.
Thank you.
So I have a question on collaboration. Here in Irving, the director collaborates with the school librarian, the monthly town newsletter, the senior center, etc. Can you speak to your experience and/or vision collaborating with other town groups? And what did you learn from your experience?
So I have a lot of experience with collaboration. I think it's probably one of the things I have the most strength in. When I was in Springfield, we had an elementary school directly located behind the library. So, you know, even when I started, we had a really wonderful relationship with them where the students would come over for story time. I expanded that quite a bit. We developed summer camp services for them, whereas summer school kids would come over to the library and learn about gardening, vegetables and nutrition, and about how like plants grow. And so that was a 5 or 6 week thing that we did every summer. We also created the first library elementary school partnership to participate in Amherst Cinema's See, Hear, Feel Film program, which is a literacy program for 3rd graders in which they learn about storytelling through cinema. And I think that is still going, and that was a whopping success. Let's see. Yeah, and I also have worked with a mentor group that works with foster children to do gardening programming with them too. Springfield is a food desert, so helping children develop good nutrition habits was very much emphasized at my location and my web library and community. So I did a lot of that. As far as adult programming goes, an emphasis was more on workforce development and job seeking. So I had a really good relationship with the Hampden County Sheriff's Department. We did a number of program series about learning how to apply for jobs, how to interview, how to dress. I think my favorite program is we did a 3-part series where in the mornings participants took basic computer instruction, and in the afternoons they did workshops on how to interview, etc. And we provided lunch in the middle, and if they completed the whole series, they got a free suit through Suit Up Springfield. So we were able to provide that, and we had our graduates were really excited, and a number of them got jobs pretty soon after the program ended. I've also worked with the Hampden County Bar Association to set up free legal clinics so that people can learn about a specific legal topic from a panel of lawyers for free, and then talk one-on-one with them individually afterwards about their own legal problems. So, you know, like I said, I think the role of libraries is to find whatever needs are in a community and fill them. And I've been really lucky to work with some amazing collaborators to make that happen. So I would approach things the same way in Irving. You know, it takes a little while to figure out who's as excited as who else about working with the library and sharing that vision of collaboration and community spirit. But there's people out there. There always are. So you just have to figure out who to work with.
Thank you. So that was our list of questions for you. And now I'd like to give you an opportunity to ask us any questions, or if there's something about you that we should have asked but forgot to and that you want to share, that's also fair game.
Sure. So you guys, I'm so excited you have this awesome new building. So I was wondering if you could speak on what your vision for the library is going forward, past the action plan that from last year's that I saw, and what, if in any way that vision has been modified based on COVID-19's restrictions.
Who wants to take that?
Sorry, I know it's a long one. It's not an easy one to answer.
Becky?
I can start. And perhaps other. Becky?
Go for it, Becky.
No, go ahead. Dan, I'll let you go first.
Becky, you with that friend. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. I think the vision for the library, one of the things is because it is a new building, it's much bigger than our last library. It has much more room and specific rooms. We have an adult area so that they can read or do computers. There's a computer area. There's a children's room. And then there's a study room, there's a collaboration room and a meeting room, and then there's a teen room. So I think the vision is to use the library effectively, and how ways in which we can use all this room that we have to make the library a more viable place and part of the community. Our last library, the library director and the library staff did an amazing job, but it was just one room with a janitor's closet as the children's room. So you couldn't hold a program and have another activity going on or patrons browsing. A lot of times events were scheduled when the library was closed or closer to closing time. But now we'll have that ability to have somebody, if it's the Girl Scouts or the Friends, there's a meeting room we can go to, and we're not interrupting the people that are using the computers. The children will have plenty of room to look at books, to play with manipulatives, and at the same time, there could be a craft going on in the craft room. So I think one of the visions for the new library is to have more activities going on for a number of age groups, and being able to serve all ages, even in one day, having 2 groups going on or whatever. So, and I think everybody is excited about that. The town has been very supportive of the new library, and I think everybody is excited to use the new library and use those new spaces. So that's what I see as one thing, as a vision for the library.
Very good.
And I guess I also see that our current director and staff and friends together literally put on dozens and dozens of programs. They could be small ones, big ones, community-wide, or just for a few of specific age groups, or open to everybody, but not a lot of senior citizens who come to the kiddie story reading. We'd like to have a new director at least continue not just volume, but volume is part of it. So there's a wide variety of programs offered, and also bring to us new things that we hadn't thought of. You mentioned a few things in your collaborations that I hadn't thought of. So to me, that's the vision of at least maintaining what we've got, not losing ground in any way, and expecting new things that we hadn't thought of.
Great. Very good. So my current library that I work in doesn't have trustees or board. It's a little strange. And while I am a member of the board in East Hampton, I guess I was kind of wondering about the role of the trustees in Irving's library, and kind of what your mission is and how you see your role and how you support the director, and kind of how you see yourselves.
Dan, do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Yeah, would you please? If you would.
Sure. So obviously for the last, gosh, I don't know, for a very long time, our major focus has been trying to get a new library. We typically meet monthly. We invite the friends to come. Becky is one of our regular attendees at our meetings. The library director lets us know about programming in the works, keeps us appraised of the current situation with the budget, updates us on the line item balances, and alerts us to any unusual expenditures that might be coming up. Part of our responsibility is to develop policies to support the library, so that the staff who work in the library have a very clear set of rules that they can then apply to the situation. It's an ongoing process. I feel like we're always behind on that front, but it's something that we feel is our responsibility. to some extent, you know, it's a collaboration. I think in some ways we try to act as a sounding board for the director. And also, you know, if we hear things in the community, to provide feedback to the director as well. Our approach historically has been not to try to manage the library. That's the director's job. Our approach has been to help as best we can with library interactions with the rest of the town, and to support library growth with the finance committee and the board of selectmen, town council, and so forth. Town meeting.
Okay.
And as a trustee also, I believe Rupert covered most of the bases. The way I see it is exactly as he's described. We don't run the day-to-day operations of the library. If we happen to see something that was way out of whack, which I don't think we have ever, but if we did, we would speak up. And I would more think, when we're the sounding board, we might not suggest that the library director stop what they're doing and make a left or right-hand turn, but perhaps nudge a little bit in some direction or another, as we think might be appropriate for the community, where sometimes the library director might not realize that. And even then, the director may disagree and have reasonable discussion. I think Rupert pretty much nailed it there.
So I like that you're talking about open discussion and kind of clarity. I think that's really important. And I wondered if you could speak a bit more about communication with the town and how that works, and if you think that the communication is going well, or kind of just about you know, and like whether if things take a long time and that sort of thing too.
What kind of things might take a long time? I don't know if Rupert, you got your mouth open, you want to talk, go right ahead.
Sure, I thought I heard somebody ready to jump in. So the town has various departments, and there are, I believe, weekly department head meetings,
Okay.
Which the library director would attend. And so that really puts the administrative lead of each department in direct contact with each other way more efficiently than if it went through the trustees.
Okay.
We've worked with, well, obviously our current director has worked a lot with the Historic Commission and the Rec Commission and the Senior Center as primary co-workers in providing programs and serving our community. And that also happens directly without the trustees being in the way, which I suspect we would be.
Could I also say there's a town newsletter, which is a pretty big deal, and I've always assumed that it's pretty well read. It's certainly its production is you know, yeah, it's a big deal, and the current director usually includes a significant several pages or a page or whatever of information every month. I mean, I'm coming from the school side. The school adds things to the newsletter, but different town departments also add something on a regular basis, and I think that that's been a pretty good vehicle for communication from the library out to the community. And it comes out once a month, and Barbara, I believe, even helps with production. I know in my small town, we have a newsletter that only comes out quarterly, but just the getting it out is a group effort. You know, there's always a work party to put it together. And so with this monthly one, I believe there is something like that the library also is involved with, and even the library is a place where they're available, right? I mean, So these
Yeah.
newsletters, I'm not sure if they're actually mailed to households,
They are.
but
Yes.
they are.
Every household
Okay.
in town gets one for free.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. But then there's
That's
also a
great.
stack usually at the library. There's a stack at the school. So, you know, the library helps make that all happen as well.
Wonderful. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. That sounds great. I guess my last question is, I noticed in the action plan that it mentions that the library has no endowment. So I'm assuming that means that the town provides the 100% full budget every year. How has that been a struggle in years past? Have you guys felt you've had to like squeeze every dollar, or are you, I guess I just wanted to hear about what that is like for you guys.
I just want to mention that the current director has written many, many, many grants, and so that has made it so that we can do much more than we would have been able to do with just the budget.
Excellent.
Yeah. Cool.
In general, we're very well supported by the town. We do need to make a case for ourselves on a yearly basis, but we have been successful in growing our library with town budgetary support. But we also rely on MBLC for significant funds as well.
Okay, great.
Becky?
And
Thank you, Becky.
yeah, and the Friends of the Library also work to support library programs, and it's been done a number of ways. So the Friends will meet with the new director to find out how that person would like to set it up. In the past, Friends, usually myself, we've been involved in the planning, like for the summer program that happened once. To be part of it, usually the Friends provide prizes, and last year we bought books for the summer program, but the weekly prizes. And also the library director can ask for money for a program. She has done that in the past, and then the Friends will vote on it, and always they'll provide to support the library. The other way it's been done, if the Friends have a program, for example, we have a woman, Cheryl Fay, who comes and she portrays historical female figures. And so the library director has been very receptive to the Friends group when they say, can we do this program? So she's been open to doing it that way, and then the Friends do all the advertising and find the funding for that program. So it's been done either way. A director either comes and asks for money. She's usually at our monthly meetings, or if the Friends have an idea that they want to do for a program or an event, we present it to the director, and she's always been very receptive to helping us with that. So.
Could I ask if Carly has any input here?
Sorry?
No, I'm all set, Dan.
Oh, okay. I had answered a previous question about finance stuff. I thought Charlie might like to chime in. The town has always been very supportive of the library. We have an open town meeting, and it's usually well attended. People do ask questions, but we have a cooperative effort between finance, select board, administration, administrative person, Brian, and the trustees. It's a good working relationship. And we don't always agree, but we can disagree in an agreeable way, which is very helpful to the process. So you can never guarantee what any particular town meeting is going to do, but up until now, they've always been very supportive of the library, and the town does, along with the Friends and the grants, the town does provide most of the funding.
In all honesty, I think it's fair to say that there will be people with very strong questions requiring us to defend our stance, and we don't necessarily convince everyone, but we
Sure.
generally convince the majority of town members to help us do what we want to do.
Okay. Well, that's why you have to advocate all year round and really show that what you provide is necessary. So that's good to know. It sounds like you guys have a nice working relationship with the town, and that hopefully that won't be thrown into question because of any impending budget crisis. But I guess we'll all see what happens with with that. I guess a couple other things I want to let you guys know is that I'm pretty unflappable. I've dealt with all the bad things you could potentially deal with in a library and come out the other side doing just fine. So I've dealt with, and not that I anticipate these things, but I've dealt with overdoses and with, irate patrons and with, town council members who don't think the library is worthwhile. And I handle those situations with grace and aplomb, and that is something I think that I want you to know about me. And I'm also pretty good at raising money for programs as well. I co-headed the fundraising committee for the East Hamptons board, so I do have pretty good experience raising funds that way, and also raising money for individual events for programs and festivals that I've done at the library, and I intend to keep doing that should I be the director in Irving. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk with me today, and I'm getting a really nice vibe from all of you, so I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much. And just to let you know, our process, our current director is planning to retire at the end of June. We are trying to make our decisions and move this process forward as quickly as we possibly can, because we strongly feel that we want the incoming director to have time with the outgoing director absolutely as much as possible. So our timeline, we expect to be pretty fast. That said, appreciate your joining this interview, and we will be in touch with you as quick as we possibly can.
Now, are you guys anticipating doing a second and third rounds of interviews? Do you have a thought about I suppose you're going to be discussing that after you talk with me.
We anticipate the possibility of needing a second interview, but we won't know until later whether that's going to happen or not.
All right.
Okay.
I hope to hear from you soon, and I hope you all enjoy this blustery day and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Nice talking to you.
Nice to meet you, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Thanks to meet you. Yeah, great.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Leaving is harder than joining.
Yeah.
All right. So here we are. We have completed our interviews, and we will need to take the next steps to discuss here in open committee. Oh, I've been made the presenter. I can show my screen when I want to. Okay. Thank you. Oh, thank you, wherever you are. Just see if I can move that out of the way. There we go. Right. So we're going to need to proceed and decide what our next steps are. See if we're going to suggest a second set of interviews, or whether everybody is in agreement on one candidate. And I would love to get some input. Dan, do you have any thoughts on what our next steps might be?
I do. I only need just a moment. Hopefully people have used their whatever. And what I've done is I went along for each question. I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever their number was, for each category. And at the end, I totaled them up. And on the front of each rating form, there is in the upper left-hand corner is the individual score. So I totaled up each one for each candidate. I totaled up my score for each item. I wrote it down to an individual score. And I would ask if people haven't done that, if they might do it. And then I made this little, not much of a sheet here, but old-fashioned spreadsheet. I've got the candidates C, E, F, H, O, and Q on the left, and beside each one, put the total score. Now, if we could agree on whatever your total scores come out, if we compare them, let's, Rupert's got the bottom in there. If we can come up with the bottom 2 or 3, we may not, maybe all over the chart, but if we can agree on a couple of them that are the lowest of the scores, that would have us discussing maybe 1 or 2 do we want to keep in there or not. That's a thought for a process. If somebody has a better process, that's okay with me.
I will need a few minutes to reflect on the today's candidates to try to get my totals in order, but I think I can do it fairly quickly if people are willing to do it that way.
Okay. I'm sorry, I missed something. I was looking at all my papers. Are we filling in this spreadsheet, or is that something that just one person has access to?
It's only I that have access to
Okay.
it. So when you're ready, I can enter it and everybody can see the record, so you don't have to keep your own version of everybody else's totals.
Okay, so, okay.
I mean, I suppose I could set this up as a Google Doc, but it's.
No, I wasn't sure, but just let us know. So you need to take some time now, and then at some point you'll just have us give you the numbers to fill in, right?
Does anybody else need a few minutes?
I do.
I do, and I have a comment. What I'm envisioning is perhaps slightly different than what this form showing us here. If we each, it does compare the totals of each person or each candidate, but the form as it currently exists, when you end up a total on the right-hand side, it's lumping them all together. You're coming up with a grand total of the group instead of, here's what we all think about this candidate. If there was I'm a little concerned about doing it this way.
It doesn't have to be this way. I just threw this together this morning as a possible way of doing it.
Oh, okay.
I can also make it so it's an average score instead of a total score, if that's easier to look at. Or we could have people, only give the scores of their top 3 or something like that and see, or just name their top 3 without any scores.
We could try that.
I don't think I can name top 3 because I have ties on the way they answered the question. And for me, I found that most people, or I gave most of them a 5 for the way they answered the question, because scoring them on how they answered the question, if they supported it, then I felt that was a 5. My concern is where this score does not, we haven't taken into account their what they said, how many ideas they had, their enthusiasm, like that's a separate score. And so I don't know if that's, if after we give our scores, if then we can discuss what we thought was positive about each candidate and then choose the top 3 from that. And I don't know how anybody else rated their candidates, but.
Well, can I ask, did Rupert say it takes a few minutes?
Right.
And we just reflect for a few minutes while each of us comes up with the individual score total on the front page, if we haven't already done that. And I do think Becky has a point. You know, some people, personality comes across, not necessarily in, it's a subjective thing.
It is. It is. And this is something that I struggled with too, Becky. It seems like we don't really want to rate them solely on their ability to answer a question in a thorough, concise way. We want to incorporate some of the factual evidence within that question. So I think that the prompts for what a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 means is a little bit misleading.
Yes.
I think we would be better served if it also included an evaluation of not just how they presented, but I presented very clearly that I don't, for example, some candidate might have presented very clearly that they've never been in front of town meeting or prepared a budget. And that's a perfect 5 answer, but it's not necessarily what we're looking for. So we need to figure out a way to somehow incorporate the point of the question into the ranking.
Right. Sorry, I'm just agreeing. I don't really have anything to add, but I think the points are absolutely right, because as I look at my totals, I guess in my mind, I have 3 candidates I would recommend. They're not necessarily the highest scores. I also, hopefully I'm not going to talk a whole lot more, because I feel like I'm not, you know, I was very happy to be part of this process and to help you all, whatever I did to help. It's been very interesting to me, but I'm not really the person who's going to be living with this decision very much. So,
Well, so I just like to say, I mean, I feel that way too. I think really the beauty of this committee is that we have put together people with a wide range of ways that they interface with the library, and everyone's input is actually quite valuable.
Well, could I suggest then that we just take a few minutes, and if we were, Rupert, is this form something that you can fill in? Is it in that?
Yes, I can type on it as we go, I think.
Okay, so if we each have our total scores, we give them to Rupert, and he writes them down under our name for each one of the candidates, we can easily, to me, disregarding averaging them all together and coming up with a grand total on the right, we can see visibly how many have X score. And we can quite readily, there's only a half a dozen here, we quite readily see if there's a consensus on 3 or 4, or if we need some more discussion on it. It may very well be evident there are a couple that have the lower scores, and we can just decide we're not going to continue considering them.
I agree.
Okay, so we can do this as a first cut to see if there's any obvious winners or losers in this endeavor. Recognizing that we may, after that, choose, we may decide that we need to have a different way to evaluate.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'm just gonna take my earphones out. When you see my earphones back in, you'll see that I'm ready.
Okay.
How about this? How about if people mute themselves while they're calculating, and unmute yourself when you're ready, and that way people will know what, how things are going.
Okay.
If you're on the phone and you can't mute yourself, don't worry about it.
Oh, I can.
Okay, I'm here. I'm gonna just run real quick.
I just want to say if my phone battery dies, I will switch over and come in with computer audio.
Okay.
Oops.
Rupert, you're muted.
I just unmuted. I was going ba 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 ba, trying to find.
Maybe you
Okay, so it looks like everybody's ready. I appreciate your patience. I really like to be reflective on these things, and I don't. I'd rather take longer, but here we are. Done the best I can. There is our sheet. So can I start with you, Dan?
Sure. For Jason, I had 55. I just want to say any one of these candidates would probably make a fine director for us. They're all excellent candidates, and I don't have a whole lot separating any of them. I don't know that any of us are listening, but if they are, none of them need to feel badly in any way about how they perform an interview. They're all excellent in my opinion. But I gave Jason a 55, Lisa a 51, Tawny 58, Andrea 54, Erica 57, and Caitlin 52. And to somewhat address what Becky had mentioned, I kind of built in a little bit of the personality thing. Some candidates tended to talk a bit more. Others, the answers seemed to be a bit quicker or thinner or whatever. So I kind of took that into consideration when I was thinking, how do they answer this question? So that's what I came up with.
Okay.
Rupert, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I appreciate you all being so flexible with me coming in and out. And you may have already addressed this and I just didn't get to hear you. Were people scoring number 12 when the question was, do you have any other questions for me? Because I personally did not score it because I just felt like that was just a chance for them to share more information, but I just didn't feel like necessarily there was a way for me to really score that. So my scores may be slightly lower than everyone else's if everyone else gave a score for that number, that question. And then so I don't know if you've addressed that, if anybody else did it the same way or not. I can adjust.
Mr. Chairman?
Consistent.
Was that you, Charles? No.
No, it's Brian.
Oh, Brian, hello.
Just add some context for, I know you all are thinking very thoughtfully about your process, and Mackenzie's question also speaks to that. I sent in chat, but maybe you hadn't seen it yet. It doesn't necessarily matter if each of you have graded in the same manner as each other. It's more important that you graded the candidates consistently. And so one person may have offered points to question 12 because they thought that was relevant, and another member may choose not to award points to number 12. As long as you were consistent for all of your candidates, that's all that matters. And that will reflect in the way that you aggregate these results, whether you average them or whether you add them. That is the committee's decision. But as long as you were consistent, you're going to be fine.
Okay.
Thank you. That's a great summary of what's in the chat. If people want, I can read out the chat, or maybe you'll read it yourselves. Dan, I think you're next.
Thank you. I did rate them. Most of them got high ratings, but I did rate them on the question 12 because I thought it was important for us to know what questions someone might ask of us. What might they be interested in coming to our library? Are they interested in, is there adequate funding for the library? Is this something I want to get into? Are they interested in whatever the questions were? So I did rate every one on question 12.
And that's okay. Becky?
Oh, I rated everybody on question 12 as well. I'm sorry, I had my hand up there and I really didn't.
Oh, okay.
I had my hand on my chin. I'll put it down. No, but no,
Yes.
I did question 12 as well. But like Brian says, if I was consistent with everybody, so it was the same.
Mackenzie, are you okay with that?
I'm fine with it. The other thing I will say is, and again, I'm not really sure how you want to handle this, is that I didn't obviously have an opportunity to rate all of the candidates. I have 3 of them rated. So, because the rest of them I was unable to attend for. So,
okay. In that case, what we will do is we will do an average, and where we don't get a rating, it won't affect the average. It'll just be the average of those who did rate.
Oh, sure. Okay, sounds good. Okay.
Other questions? Who's ready to give some numbers? Becky, let me find you here. Wait a second. I have to. Okay, ready.
Okay, for Jason, it was a 47. And then I rated everybody else a 60.
I can see what you mean about a tie.
Right. Well, I thought they answered the question that was asked and supported it, so.
Who's ready now? Dean, you're next.
Okay. I have Jason as a 56. Sorry, I don't have my papers in the same order you do. Lisa as a 52.
Yep.
Natane as a 59. Andrea 51. Erica a 45. And Caitlin a 51.
Okay.
I can go next, Rupert, if that's okay.
Yep, go for it.
I have Jason as a 49, Lisa as a 48, Natane as a 45, Andrea as a 46, Erica as a 55, and Caitlin as a 55.
Alrighty. Jane, are you ready?
Oh, yep, I am. So I have Jason as a 50. I have Lisa as a 52. I have Natani as a 48. I have Andrea as a 45. I have Erica as a 51. And Caitlin as a 52.
Okay. Let me do mine. Mine are not in order either, so forgive me. I'm just going to put it in the order that they're here because that's easier for me. Andrea's a 53.
I'm going to just run to my.
Erica is a 56. Caitlin is a 56. Jason is a 54. Natani is a 53. And Lisa is a 57. If you want, give me a minute. I can change this. Yes, that's what I want. Okay, and we're gonna ba. And I want to make all of these as a. I can make this big for a second. Okay. Okay, Mackenzie, I'm ready for you.
Okay, so I was clearly a much tougher scorer than you guys were.
So long as you're consistent with yourself.
Huh?
So long as you're consistent with yourself.
Yes, yes. So I had Jason as a 36. I had, who's next? Lisa. Lisa I had as a 44, and how do you say your name again?
Natani?
Natani as a 42. And then unfortunately I was not able to score the other 3.
Right. I believe this formula will just ignore those and not treat them as zeros. It does have some effect on the average. Let me just double check what the math is doing here for 1 second. I'm going to take you out, put you back in again. Oops. Pardon me. All right, so without Mackenzie's vote, we have ranking number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now let's see what happens when I put those back in. That's still number 1? No, this is the number 1. No, this is the number 1. That's the number 2. That's the number 3. That's the number 4. That's number 5, and that's the number 6. So it only changes the final 2 in our tally.
Yeah, the top 3 stay the same, and I would
Top 3 stay
suggest
the
that
same.
the
So
top 3 is who we'd want to move forward.
Could I see? Yeah, I couldn't see the whole thing with the
No,
names and
okay.
Yeah.
the numbers.
Hang on a second. Can you
I really
see
like
the
to
whole
see
thing?
this.
Can you see this whole spreadsheet, or just
Well, what I'd like to see is the comparison with or without Mackenzie, because it kind of skews the thing if it's not included in 4 of the.
It only changed 2 of the candidates. It flip-flopped them. Otherwise, they were exactly the same ranking.
And that was the bottom 2 candidates
Right.
in both regards.
So Dan, this column where I'm moving the cursor now, column J, is without Mackenzie. Column K is with Mackenzie.
Okay.
Our top 4 are still our top 4.
Okay.
Can you see that? Do you want me to make it bigger?
I think I'm it's the top of my head here. Maybe I can make it bigger. No, I can't make it bigger. Yeah, I guess I can.
Rupert, can you drag your screen? Because it really doesn't look like it's taking up the whole screen on our end. No, that doesn't help.
What do you see now?
It's very small, and we're only seeing the bottom couple cells. So we're still only seeing cells 5, 6, and 7.
There we go.
Oh, I see. I see the problem. Oh, I can make this as big as we want. Hey, I'm learning something new about technology. I can't see some faces, but hopefully this is easier for you guys to see now.
I'm not being able to see the names on the left and the
Yeah.
along. A
Yeah,
little bit better.
almost.
Almost.
Okay.
If you make each of our cells smaller with the scores, you might be able to get them all in. Oh, there you go. They're all there.
There, now, perfect.
Does that help, Dan?
Yes. And just like a moment to study it, compare with what I've got here and see. I don't know if anybody else sees anything, but
I'm going to do something while you're studying that. I'm going to do something different here. I'm going to highlight each individual's top scorers. Top two. Or well, I can't do it all the way. One of the things that I like to look at is just the top two, or as close as I can get to it consistently. And we can see that if you look across the rows, Jason doesn't do very well, and that's reflected in the ranking, the average.
Same with Andrea.
Right. Right. So there's a what that says to me is that there's not a whole bunch of skewing or outliers that are affecting the numerical process.
Mm-hmm. And I did hear, well, never mind.
well, I suspect anything I might say probably wouldn't change this, but I'm puzzled by, I guess everybody has their own subjective approach. There was one of the candidates here that's in the top three. To me, the interview went very fast, which is okay, but the answers were, to me, quite quick and quite thin. And I just don't get that in a huge library setting, the person didn't really work with trustees and town meetings and stuff. And in a small library setting, didn't really do that either with there are no trustees. And it got a high rating, and I'm curious as to why those things would not be important. They're important to me. Again, any candidate will do a fine job. I'm not speaking against anyone. I'm just trying to understand why one would end up on top when they have little or no experience dealing with trustees and town meetings.
Dan, would it be?
Go ahead, Mackenzie.
Oh, well, I was just wondering if if we could just put a pin in your thought for a second, Dan, and would it be easy to just remove two candidates off the top, that unless you're, Dan, thinking that one of the two bottom candidates are a strong candidate for you, and then go through them, the other the other 5 and just, or how many? 4, the other 4 that were left, and just kind of, maybe to Dan's point, kind of give some supporting thoughts about why it is that they were scored that way? Do you know, am I being clear? Maybe I'm not being very clear.
I understand what you're saying.
But could I move that we remove the lowest 2 top, the lowest 2 scores? I still have concerns about the way it's happening here, that the 60 on all down the line is a different way of looking at things than how I think the rest of us looked at it. Doesn't make it wrong, Becky, just different. I kind of looked at the 1 through 5 on each question of how well did they answer the question, not just did they answer it.
Okay, so.
Not that change anything either.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? And then we can discuss it.
I second.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to remove the 2 lowest scoring candidates in our first evaluation of the 6. So Becky, I know you wanted to say something before we got to this. Is it relevant to this question or can it wait?
It can wait.
Okay. So discussion about removing those, I see it's one of your favorite genes, so I don't know if you feel comfortable with this.
I'm not really happy about removing that one. I mean, I don't know if Becky feels comfortable explaining why she scored that one person so low, or if she doesn't want to be put on the spot.
Becky?
No, I'd be glad to address both of those situations. The first one for Caitlin, with not having experience with trustees. She did have experience dealing with other people when she was explaining her collaboration. So I thought communicating with others, even though it may not have been trustees recently, she has dealt with other people. So that's why I scored her high. And I did not score anybody up or down as to whether or not they had had experience with specific things. Like some had more experience with computers, some relied on IT techs. So I was just scoring their answer. Then I had another way of assessing their attributes and who they had collaborated with and their experience. So I didn't mark them down if they didn't have experience with, like, say, some used IT rather than troubleshooting their own computers. So I didn't mark them down for it. And I didn't mark Caitlin down for not having experience with the trustees. She just didn't have it. Jason, the reason I scored him at so low in comparison to the other people that I scored, I thought he didn't give a lot of examples. And I don't know if it was because he was nervous, and it's a different way to do an interview, but I thought a lot of times he depended on the staff or the patrons to give him the information. And I felt that as a director, he should at least have some ideas to fall back on in case the staff or patrons didn't have ideas. And I can't remember offhand the term he used, but there was a term he frequently used, and it sounded like he didn't have an idea that it was that he would seek from other people. So that's why I did that.
Can I slide this off the screen for a little bit? Or I don't know, can you guys still see it? The spreadsheet, or did it go away?
We have the spreadsheet.
I can see it now.
You can still see it. Okay, now I can see. I can't, but I can see your faces. That's better. Okay. other comments about knocking the bottom two off? Or Jean, do you have a response?
I do. I have an idea, and it may not work. I was wondering, sorry, Becky, but I was wondering if we took each person's highest and lowest score off and worked with the other numbers, if that would give us a different effect, or if anybody else was comfortable with that at all.
That's fine with me.
If we do what?
Well, I think it's going to be,
Might not work.
I'm trying to see if somebody just sent me a, no,
Mr.
something
Chairman.
rang in my ears. Yes,
Mr. Chairman, can I mention one more thing?
yes, please.
I just want you all to remember that you're only right now rating the interview. And there seems to be maybe a question about whether or not that leads directly to your recommended finalist to the library trustees. It doesn't necessarily have to. You have application materials that include cover letters and examples and there's more material here. It may align, it may not align. You all can continue to go through this process, but I would hate to watch you all try to convince yourselves to change your scoring if you believe strongly as you were doing it that you were being consistent.
Could everybody hear Brian's words? If
Yes.
you could not hear Brian's words, let me know. So I think Brian makes an excellent point that this scoring is designed for interview only. It's one of the things that I had struggled with when I was trying to score my do my scoring. Is I was thinking, I really wish I could go back and look at the resume and the cover letter while I'm doing this, so I could incorporate it, but there wasn't time.
Well, there's a possibility to recess this meeting to another time. I'd like to make progress, but I want people to have adequate time to look at all the stuff they look at that's available to look at and make a reasonable decision. I'm confident in what I've done. I don't believe I will change based on cover letters. I read them prior. If it's appropriate, we can take more time.
Okay, so I think to follow the Roberts rules, we would need to vote on the motion that's on the floor, and then we could consider another motion to do some delay and give folks a chance to incorporate information outside of the interview.
Well, if we're going to take more time, I would retract my motion that we remove two. If people want to take more time to look at it, seem inappropriate to remove a couple, then take the time to look at it.
correct.
Okay, what's
agree.
the sense of the meeting here?
It
Jean.
seems like we could, instead of retracting the motion, it could maybe perhaps if we took a vote, well, I guess we can't. I was going to
We would
say
have to vote-
it might
vote
get
down.
voted down,
Right.
but maybe if you felt more comfortable just retracting.
I think either one is acceptable as a process.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely, you're up.
Is there one, so maybe this isn't, let me just say it and then you can tell me what you want me to do with it. Is there a candidate of these in this list that everyone can agree that regardless of anything else, they're just feeling this is not the appropriate candidate for us? And can we just get it out of the way so we have less to focus on? I'm just wondering if there's at all a way to tailor down. It seemed like there was a concern with at least one of the bottom two. Is it just one of the bottom two, or is it both of the bottom twos that there's a wish to look forward? If it's only one, then I would ask that maybe we get rid of the one that we can all have consensus on and just focus on 6 candidates instead of 7 or
So,
whatever.
in that regard, the highlighted candidate was tied for first with Becky, but nobody else's favorite. So I assume that would be the one that we would decide to remove if we so chose.
You want to maybe roll call that or something so that everybody has a voice?
I'm happy to do that. Jane?
Well, I wonder if we could change the motion and change it to just removing this one, voting on this one name, whether or not to remove it, instead of the two names. It's just, maybe I'm trying to stick too close to the rules of order. Maybe we don't need to, I don't know.
If that's a motion to amend this, I would second the motion to amend. If we
All right.
vote on the
All
motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend. All those in favor of amending to consider eliminating just one, signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
It sounds like the aye. Any nays? Okay, so now we have on the table a motion to remove one candidate. There are two candidates that only got one top vote. Only one of the candidates got a top vote that wasn't split and shared with other candidates. So we're talking about line 5 in the spreadsheet. Can you guys still see that?
Yes.
We do.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there more discussion about this motion? And can I just be, specific that we're talking about eliminating candidate Q? No more discussion?
No.
Okay, so I will do a roll call vote in this case. Jane, do you vote in favor of removing candidate Q?
Yes, I am in favor.
Becky?
In favor.
Jean?
In favor.
Dan?
In favor.
Mackenzie?
Yes, in favor.
Charles?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Okay, I will make it unanimous. The motion is passed. So that means that we now have this to look at. It sounds to me, my sense is that a number of people would like to have a chance to incorporate factors outside of the question answering. And so I would take a motion to put in some kind of a delay into our process or reconvene. I'm not sure how this will work.
Could I ask, is it the pleasure of the group to reconvene at a different day or recess to convene in an hour, or I don't know what your schedules are, what your lives are like.
I will go with the consensus. My schedule at this point is completely up in the air.
Yes, understood.
I will go with the consensus, but I think I would feel better not recessing for just an hour, but coming back.
Okay, so Becky, you would prefer to have more time to put your thoughts together and reconvene on a different day.
Correct.
Jane?
And I would agree with Becky.
Okay.
Yeah.
Charles?
I agree with Becky.
Jean?
Fine either way.
Okay, so we have Dan. You don't need it. You don't need it.
Whatever the group wants is fine with me, and if we need to have Brian repost something for next, whenever it is, Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever it might be, as soon as time we could do it.
Right. It would probably have to be Wednesday, because if we posted Monday.
Correct.
Thank you. That was a correct from Brian. Yes, Jane.
Well, next week, Wednesday would be the one day I could not meet it. I also want to ask, I guess, just about the procedure, because so are the trustees then looking for names to go forward that after we decide what names, then the trustees sort of take it from there and either decide whatever is the next? Am I understanding that correctly?
I had thought that that's what we were going to do, that we were going to whittle down, and then the trustees would meet to make the final decision. But it sounds like maybe we're morphing into a possibility of doing it next time all together. I don't, Dan and Rupert, please feel free to chime in.
Dan?
I would like the clear process that this body recommends 3 to the trustees as we started out as a goal. And the trustees have a separate meeting to decide on more interviews, whatever it is we need to do, second round of interviews, or at least a discussion. So it's the trustee decision who gets hired.
That, I believe, I think legally that's the way it would need to work, is it would have to be a trustee vote to hire. I came into this open to the possibility that this committee would have a clear front runner, but not counting on it. It's obvious that we don't have a clear front runner at this point in time, and so I'm happy to support Dan's request for this committee to put forward 3 names.
Okay.
Does that resolve your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So what I would like to suggest moving forward for our next meeting would be for each member of this committee to have a clear list of their 3 top candidates and be prepared to explain their thinking briefly.
Okay, so the goal of the next meeting is to explain why we think, who we think is the top 3 should be the top 3. Okay.
Yes, briefly.
That's agreeable to me.
Okay, is that clear to everyone? Becky, did you?
Yes.
Jean?
Yep.
So what we're asking is you come up with your top 3 and go to bat for them, a little mini elevator speech or whatever. And we'll all do that and we'll all listen to each other. Does that work for you, Mackenzie?
It does. I mean, again, I'm a little bit, hampered by the fact that I don't know the last 2 candidates, but I will do my best. Did we want to schedule that right now while we have everybody, so it's just clear and on the calendar?
We would need to do that. Becky?
My question is, would this recording be available for Mackenzie to review? So
That's a question for Brian, when it would be available. It eventually will become public, but I don't know when.
I can make sure it gets to the chairwoman as early as tomorrow.
Would that be helpful, Mackenzie?
Absolutely. Then I can more fully participate in the conversation.
Great idea, Becky.
thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Becky. Thanks for thinking of that.
You're welcome.
It's probably
Could it
it's only the only silver lining to having this thing recorded, right?
Just
Right.
about. Dan, you had something to say?
Yeah, in addition to coming to the next meeting, prepared to explain, why they think anyone thinks the top 3 should be the top 3. Since we do have 5 here, and it could be any one of them up to discussion, I would like for people to discuss as much as they choose why it is they would give a low score to someone on a particular question or item or whatever, just so we understand. English language is a science, an art, not a science, and
Yes.
we all hear the same words, but our brain picks up different things.
Mm-hmm.
And some of I look at the scores, I'm baffled, can't understand.
Me too, Dan.
Okay.
Good. So when you make your lists, when we all make our lists of our top 3 candidates, it should include all the information you have available to you as a committee member. So it should include the interviews. It should include the cover letter and resume. It should not include any reference checks that you carry out on your own. You should not do that. It should be based on the information, just the information that came to us on this committee. Is that clear to everyone and acceptable?
Yes.
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 Fine.
Yep.
So when you do that, I will ask you to, think about experience, think about how personalities and how people might fit or might not fit in our community, as well as experience and interview responses. Okay?
Okay.
So, Brian, if you can hear us, we would like to set another meeting. Is Thursday available, everyone? Today is Saturday. I don't think we can do it as early as Tuesday by open meeting law. Wednesday, we would lose at least one committee member, so it sounds like Thursday.
Okay.
Shall we meet at 5?
Thursday, would you like?
I'm sorry?
What time Thursday are you thinking?
Shall we meet at 5?
If
Does that
that's
work
the
for you,
earliest,
Charlie?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay.
Okay.
So Brian, will you post a meeting for Thursday at 5 and set up the all the camera stuff?
I will get that done.
Alrighty. Is there any other business that we need to consider before Thursday?
Is it possible for you to email that chart to us?
I certainly can do that. I will email it to you as a document so that you can get into Excel and play with it yourself.
Okay.
And we did have an agenda item to review minutes from April 27th. Is this something that the group would like to consider now?
Sure.
It is 2:23. All right, so we have before us the draft of the minutes of April 27th, 2020. And so I will accept a motion to accept these minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mackenzie,
I'll second it.
second by Jean. All right, now I'll open the floor to discussion about these minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look them over, or do you need to take a moment now?
Rupert, do you have them right there that you could put a screen share? Otherwise, I gotta dig them out.
Oh, yeah, let me see. That's a good idea. Let's see. Did I put them on this computer? Or are they on the other computer? I emailed them to myself. All right, let's see.
If anybody needs them sent again real quick, I could do that. I don't know if that would help, but I think I can do that.
I just am going to pull them out of my other email. Take me a minute to find them.
Oh, whoops, there you are.
Oh, it was from yesterday that I mailed those myself here, didn't I?
If everybody has them in front of them and doesn't need this, then don't worry about it. I just thought it would be an easy way to look at them.
Yep.
I have them, but if anybody else, I just don't want you doing it if we don't need it.
Yeah, I printed them out. So I have a printed copy, but I just got this document open. I just have to download it, I think. Come on.
back.
All right. So now it's in my downloads. And let me. Share.
Sorry, Rupert, I didn't realize they weren't right there. Again, I have mine in front of me. If nobody else needs them, we don't need to go through this process. It was
Does
just
anyone
a
else need them?
suggestion.
I have mine.
I don't need them.
Okay. Well, in that
Because
case,
I read them,
yeah.
but I
Pardon?
can't vote on them.
so are there any amendments or corrections needed? Hearing no corrections or amendments, all those in favor of accepting the minutes of April 27, 2020 of the Director Search Committee as written, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
I
Aye.
Oh, does Becky not?
Any nays?
And I have to abstain because I wasn't on the committee at that date. But I did listen.
Okay.
I listened to the meeting. I was a guest on the
Oh,
agenda, but I did.
Thank you.
I
Thank you,
wasn't-
Becky, for your honesty and integrity, as usual. So we have one abstention. All the others say aye, so these minutes are accepted as written.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye. All right. I would take a motion. Normally I would offer it myself, but I'm counting on somebody else.
I moved that we adjourn. Is
We have
that
a
the motion
to
you're
adjourn
looking
from
for?
Jane.
I second.
We have a second from Becky. Any discussion?
I just wanted to thank Rupert for chairing this. You've done a wonderful job.
I feel silly, but thank you very much. All right, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Aye, it was unanimous. Thank you all, and we'll see you again on Thursday at 5 o'clock.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
There it is. There's my camera, I found it. All right. Brian, are you okay?
Yes, sir. I will close this session out for you. It will start processing as a recording.
Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Okay, sir.
Okay, bye.